Chapter 529. It could be said that the battle between Yen Long's camp and He Shan's camp was the highlight of the tournament. Everyone was looking forward to the final outcome of the battle between the two camps. Would He Shan's camp completely crush Yen Long's camp, or would Yen Long's camp create another miracle like last time? After seeing Yi Hao enter the secret realm, the Fire Emperor and the others were still in a daze. "Do you think our Lord can do it?" the Fire Emperor asked worriedly. "Forget it. Let's do as the Lord has instructed." Emperor Sun also had a worried look on his face. Looking at the battle rankings, the battle between Yen Long's camp and He Shan's camp was very eye-catching. As for He Shan's camp, their dragon power alone had reached 900 million, and the countries behind them were lined up in a row. Counting carefully, all the countries added together reached a total of 41 countries. It was not like what Emperor He Shan had said, only 30 countries. Looking at Yen Long's camp, it was unusually bleak. Yen Long's camp only had the Fire Dragon Empire, and they only had 14 dragon power. This huge difference made everyone speechless. Haha, this is too interesting. Yen Long's camp is going all out, and they don't care about their reputation anymore. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Could it be that the Fire Empire, Sun Empire, and the others don't dare to participate in the tournament and let the Fire Dragon Empire go up? Their opponent has 900 million dragon power, and they have 14 dragon power. How dare they compete? What a disgrace. This isn't just a disgrace, it's simply shameless. If I were in Yen Long's camp, I would be too embarrassed to go out. It's too embarrassing. I thought this tournament would be interesting, but it seems like it's not interesting at all. Forget it, let's watch the other countries. 900 million against 14 dragon power, it's not worth watching. You made me look forward to it for so long, and you only let me watch this. On the 10,000 Kingdoms continent, those who were looking forward to seeing Yen Long's camp create a miracle were all disappointed. They didn't expect the Fire Empire and the other empires to not participate in the tournament. Even with the Fire Empire and the other empires, the chances of Yen Long's camp winning were pitifully small. Now that only Yen Long's camp was participating in the tournament, it was even more impossible for them to win. Unless the Fire Dragon Empire sent out all martial gods, they might still have a chance of winning. But in the eyes of the crowd, this was almost impossible. That was because if the Flame Dragon Empire was truly capable of taking out that many martial gods, they wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. They only had 14 dragon power. As a result, when everyone looked over, astonished voices once again filled the sky and covered the earth. Because the Fire Dragon Empire, a country with 14 dragon power points, was going to fight to the death with a faction with 900 million dragon power points. How laughable it all was! It was like a newborn baby challenging a world-class boxing champion to a life-and-death duel. This was a naked provocation to the He Shan camp. Is the Fire Dragon Empire crazy? Who knows? Not only did they not admit defeat, they even started a fight to the death. I really don't know what they're thinking. The ruler of the Fire Dragon Empire is really a weirdo. Looks like the Fire Dragon Empire is in charge of being funny. After the crowd recovered from their shock, they all mocked the Fire Dragon Empire for overestimating themselves. Preposterous, how dare they provoke this emperor? Emperor Hashan was originally distressed about not being able to devour the dragon power of the Fire Empire and the other empires. Who would have thought that Yi Hao would fight to the death? Since you want to play, this emperor will play with you. Emperor Hashan was slightly angered and immediately agreed to fight to the death. Find the Fire Dragon Empire for this emperor. If you find anyone from the Fire Dragon Empire, there's no need to report. Tear them to pieces. Emperor Hashan commanded the army of 900 million. After the army received the order, they immediately searched for Yi Hao. Everyone thought that with Emperor Hashan's temper, he would definitely crush the Fire Dragon Empire after entering the mystic realm. But after a day and night, there were still no changes in the Yanlong camp and the He-Shan camp. Reporting to Alliance Leader, we didn't find anyone from the Fire Dragon Empire. An emperor immediately came forward to report. Hearing this, Emperor He-Shan couldn't help but frown. He looked slightly angry and slammed the table. No one? Did you find the Fire Dragon Empire's palace? We did, but there wasn't a single person in the Fire Dragon Empire. That emperor was the person that Emperor He-Shan sent to the Fire Dragon Empire to ambush. He quickly replied. How is that possible? Can people fly away? Emperor He-Shan shouted angrily. He originally wanted to crush the Fire Dragon Empire after entering the Mystic Realm and let Yi Hao know the consequences of provoking him. But when his army arrived at the Fire Dragon Empire, what they found was the Fire Dragon Empire. There was no one there. I tore down the entire Fire Dragon Empire, but I didn't find a single person, that emperor said bitterly. He originally thought that he would be able to make a great contribution and make Emperor He-Shan look at him in a different light. Who knew that his efforts would be for naught? He didn't even find a single person. Send my order to everyone. They must find the people from the Fire Dragon Empire as soon as possible. I don't have the time to waste with them. Humph, just a little rat. Let's see how long you can hide. Emperor He-Shan snorted. He thought that Yi Hao was hiding on purpose. Have you found anyone? Emperor He-Shan asked the emperors the next day. Not on my side. Not on my side either. Same here. I didn't find a single person. The emperors all spoke with ugly expressions. Alliance Leader He-Shan, have we been fooled by the Fire Dragon Empire? One of the emperors suddenly asked. The Fire Dragon Empire dares to fool me. If I catch them, I will tear them to pieces. Emperor He-Shan felt that the emperor's words made sense the more he analyzed them. He now began to suspect that the Fire Dragon Empire had been fooling him from the beginning and made him agree to fight to the death. Now that the fight to the death had been activated, if he couldn't find Yi Hao, he wouldn't be able to kill Yi Hao. He wouldn't be able to make a move. If they couldn't find Yi Hao, why would they continue to be in a stalemate like this? He had more than 900 million soldiers on his side, but they couldn't find anyone from the Fire Dragon Empire even though they had found Yi Hao. How laughable would it be if word got out? Chapter 530. The emperors felt bitter in their hearts. Although the secret realm wasn't very big, it was still the size of 3 imperial dynasties and more than 30 imperial dynasties. Looking for Yi Hao in such a large area was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack. Most importantly, Yi Hao wasn't fixed in place. Yi Hao could always move around. How were they supposed to find him? Go and find him. I want to see him in 3 days if he's dead or alive. Emperor He-Shan roared furiously. Yes. The emperors could only agree when they saw the angry Emperor He-Shan. After all, Emperor He-Shan was the most powerful person here. They all followed Emperor He-Shan's lead. Following Emperor He-Shan's order, the 900 million troops started searching again. Meanwhile, outside the secret realm, there was an uproar. What the hell is the He-Shan camp doing? Can't they even deal with Yanlong's camp? It's already been 2 or 3 days. Is the He-Shan camp playing around? There's such a huge disparity in strength, yet they still can't end the battle quickly. The He-Shan camp is really something. Just wait and see. There's no point in being anxious. Everyone started to clamor. In their opinion, Yanlong's camp should have been destroyed in the blink of an eye. It was beyond their expectations that they could survive for so long. At this moment, Yi Hao was strolling around the secret realm. System, you're saying that there are origin fragments in this secret realm? Why can't I find them? Although Yi Hao was strolling around, he was very fast. He was like a bolt of lightning as he flashed through the secret realm. Yi Hao had no intention of fooling around with the He-Shan camp. Instead, as soon as he entered the secret realm, the system told him that there might be origin fragments in this secret realm. He had only found 2 origin fragments so far. Moreover, this secret realm would only appear in the Myriad Kingdom Grand Ceremony. If there were any fragments here, he definitely couldn't let them go. Moreover, he had to search for them now. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to enter the secret realm again. Moreover, if he obtained all the origin fragments, he would unlock all the generals and all the magical beasts in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Then, he would be able to unify the Myriad Kingdom continent. However, Yi Hao had been searching day and night for 2 or 3 days, but he still couldn't find any traces of the origin fragments. You can take out an origin fragment. You might be able to sense its information, the system hurriedly said when it heard Yi Hao's question. Why didn't you say so earlier? Hearing the system's words, Yi Hao grumbled. For the past 2 days, he was as tired as a dog. He was like a headless fly, running around aimlessly. In the end, the system only told him the method to find the origin fragment now. You didn't ask. The system. Yi Hao was speechless. He definitely wouldn't fight with the system. He'd better find the source fragment first. Yi Hao immediately took out the origin fragment. Rumble. Suddenly, Yi Hao felt the ground beneath his feet tremble. What's going on? Yi Hao was shocked by the violent tremor. Yi Hao wasn't the only one. The secret realms of all the empires were trembling violently. Many empires stopped fighting at this moment and looked at the sky in confusion. Secret realms were the most stable. They never knew that secret realms could tremble. Moreover, there was no record of such a thing in the history of the Myriad Kingdom ceremony. Why did I feel a violent tremor just now? What happened? Emperor Hushan asked the emperors immediately. I felt it too. It's so strange. Why is the ground trembling? Who knows? I've attended the Myriad Kingdom ceremony a few times, but nothing like this has ever happened. This is definitely strange. It's impossible for the secret realm to tremble for no reason. Could it be that something is going to happen to the treasure in the secret realm? Everyone discussed. Although the speaker didn't mean it, the listener was interested. Emperor Hushan's eyes lit up when he heard that something was going to happen to the treasure. This secret realm was the most mysterious existence in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Moreover, this secret realm was full of mysteries. Although this secret realm had a long history, no one knew where it came from. If there was a treasure in here, it must be an incredible treasure. If there really was a treasure, he would make a killing after obtaining it. After all, everyone was ambitious. His ambition was even greater. Emperor Hushan was excited when he heard that there might be a treasure. Go and find out the reason for this tremor. Emperor Hushan ordered immediately. He couldn't calm down. Alliance Master Hishan, do you think that the Flame Dragon Camp is the cause of the trembling of the mystic realm? One of the emperors suddenly guessed. Emperor Hishan was startled. This wasn't impossible. If this treasure was obtained by Yanlong's camp, it would be troublesome. After all, they didn't know the use of this treasure. However, after thinking for a while, he relaxed. In his opinion, there was no treasure that could compare to an army of 900 million. Even if Yi Hao obtained the treasure in the end, he would have to obediently hand it over. After all, once the secret realm was opened, no one would be able to leave the secret realm until one side was completely dead. However, he still had a worry in his heart that he didn't dare to voice out. Yi Hao could commit suicide. After that, he could still leave the secret realm with the treasure. At the thought of this, Emperor Hushan ordered anxiously, "Go and find it. Find out what the treasure is and where the bastard from Yanlong's camp is." Everyone was also very curious about the treasure that might exist. They were also very enthusiastic about finding it. Moreover, they weren't just searching for the Hishan camp. They were also searching for the other warring dynasties. In order to find the treasure that might exist, they left the battlefield one by one and started searching for it in the secret realm. Could it be in the sky? Yi Hao didn't know that because of his actions, he had attracted the attention of all the dynasties. Moreover, hundreds of dynasties were searching for the origin fragment in the secret realm. Yi Hao sensed the connection between the origin fragment, and Yi Hao looked at the sky curiously. Forget it. Let's take a look first. Yi Hao felt that the secret realm wouldn't tremble for no reason. Therefore, the probability of the origin fragment existing in the secret realm was very high. At the thought of this, Yi Hao immediately rose from the ground and rushed into the sky. 10,000 meters. 20,000 meters. 30,000 meters. I can't take it anymore. I'm almost at my limit. Yi Hao panted heavily after flying for 30,000 meters. Even though he was a 7th-order martial emperor, and could use the cultivation of a 7th-order martial saint, his body couldn't withstand flying so high. Chapter 531. What's that? Suddenly, Yi Hao saw 2 beams of light in the sky. One was gold, and the other was red. The red one was weaker, but Yi Hao immediately sensed that it was the origin fragment. Yi Hao was overjoyed when he saw this. He immediately flew upwards. However, as the saying went, looking at a mountain will kill a horse. The 2 beams of light seemed very close, but they were still tens of thousands of meters tall. Yi Hao gritted his teeth and continued flying upwards. Gradually, he began to feel tired. Guo Yifan. Yi Hao immediately summoned Guo Yifan. Master. Guo Yifan immediately bowed. Bring me up quickly. Yi Hao immediately said to Guo Yifan. Guo Yifan didn't waste any time. He grabbed Yi Hao's shoulder and flew towards the 2 beams of light. Yi Hao instantly felt much more relaxed after being carried by Guo Yifan. He couldn't help but exhale. It's so small. Yi Hao and Guo Yifan flew in front of the origin fragment and realized that it was only half the size of a normal origin fragment. This is a portal? Teleportation door? Yi Hao looked at the giant golden door beside the origin fragment. This is the origin fragment. Collect it and you will be able to form the origin fragment. The system seemed to have noticed Yi Hao's confusion and immediately explained. I see. Yi Hao nodded and reached out to take it. Wait a minute. The system immediately stopped Yi Hao when it saw that he was about to take the origin fragment. What's wrong? Yi Hao asked curiously. The system had never stopped him from doing anything. If you take the origin fragment, this world will be destroyed and the dragon power will be wasted. You can kill those people and take the origin fragment. It won't be too late. I see. Hearing the system's words, Yi Hao secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, the system had reminded him. Otherwise, the 900 million dragon power points would have been wasted. Yi Hao had already treated the 900 million dragon power as his own from the very beginning. After all, He-Shan had provoked him. How could he not pay a price? Let's go and find Emperor He-Shan. Yi Hao immediately said to Guo Yifan. What are you looking for? Soon, Yi Hao saw a group of soldiers searching for something. Of course we're looking for treasures. The soldiers were so focused on searching that they didn't even look up at Yi Hao. Treasure? Could it be an origin source fragment? Yi Hao was shocked. He recalled the commotion he had caused in the mystic realm. He hadn't expected these people to react so quickly. However, it was fortunate that these people were searching in the wrong direction. If they were to search on the ground, they would never have thought that they would end up empty-handed. No, who are you? The search team immediately reacted and stared at Yi Hao, questioning him loudly. He's from Yanlong's camp. Kill him. Someone reacted immediately. He raised his weapon and rushed towards Yi Hao. Instantly, thousands of people reacted. They raised their weapons and rushed towards Yi Hao. Die! Yi Hao snorted coldly. He took out his blood-stained dual sabers and began to fight. In the blink of an eye, thousands of dragon power points had been collected. The ground was littered with corpses. Next, Yi Hao let out all the primordial beasts that had reached the peak of Martial Saint, as well as the sky-devouring rats. thousands of primordial beasts that were hundreds of meters long. Some of them were even thousands of meters long. It was a terrifying sight. Master! All the beasts had reached the level of martial saint and could speak. They all shouted at Yi Hao in unison. Kill them all. Leave no one in this mystic realm alive, Yi Hao ordered. Yes. In the blink of an eye, thousands of demonic beasts turned into black shadows and flew out. Roar. Instantly, the roars of the primordial beasts could be heard in the mystic realm. Ding dong. Congratulations on gaining 10 dragon power points. Ding dong. Congratulations on gaining 13 dragon power points. Ding dong. Congratulations on gaining 25 dragon power points. In an instant, Yi Hao could hear the system's notifications ringing in his mind. At this time, the entire 10,000 lands continent once again turned their attention to Yanlong's faction. How is this possible? Is the Fire Dragon Empire going to create another miracle? Oh my god, the dragon power is increasing at a rapid pace. Who is the one bullying who? No one would have thought that the show that they had been waiting for several days without seeing would happen so quickly. 14 dragon power points against 900 million dragon power points, and 14 dragon power points was killing 900 million dragon power points. Everyone was wondering if the He-Shan faction was eating sh*t. Otherwise, why would they be beaten to such a state by the Fire Dragon Empire? Because in the blink of an eye, the He-Shan faction had already lost tens of thousands of dragon power points, and the dragon power behind the Fire Dragon Empire's name could not be seen at all. That was because it kept on increasing and had no intention of stopping. Emperor's son, I'm not dreaming, right? What did the master do? If you ask me, who should I ask? At this moment, the Fire Emperor looked at Emperor's son and the two of them stared at each other. The worry on their faces had completely disappeared and was replaced with shock and joy. We still can't see through the master. We shouldn't have doubted the master's power. The Fire Emperor sighed. I'm guessing that the master brought the martial gods to kill in the secret territory. Chen Ziqiao guessed. Even the martial gods don't have such speed. You have to know that according to the rules of the secret territory, only 14 people can be brought in. To them, even 14 martial gods wouldn't be able to kill in such a short time. Unless the He-Shan faction members were just standing there in a daze and waiting to be slaughtered. What they didn't know was that there was indeed a limit to the number of soldiers in the secret territory. The amount of dragon power points one had when entering the secret territory would determine the number of soldiers one could bring in. What they didn't know was that there was no limit to the number of beasts one could bring in. Actually, even if they knew, it wouldn't be of much use. After all, if a martial artist controlled a few beasts, he would only be able to gain an advantage in a small-scale battle or in a one-on-one fight. And in the face of 900 million enemy soldiers, a few beasts wouldn't be of much use. Who would have thought that Yi Hao was able to control so many ancient beasts and even had the martial Saint pills? Such a heaven-defying existence. Let the He-Shan faction tremble in fear. Let them know the consequences of provoking me. Seeing thousands of ancient beasts charging out, Yi Hao wasn't satisfied. He immediately released another 5,000 ancient beasts and another 5,000 heaven-swallowing rat. Yi Hao then took out 10,000 martial Saint pills. In the blink of an eye, another 10,000 strong army appeared in front of Yi Hao. Kill to your heart's content. Seeing the 10,000 beasts, Yi Hao laughed and ordered. Chapter 532. When the other emperors heard Emperor He-Shan's roar, they were stunned at first. Then, they all looked at their own country's dragon power, their hearts filled with anger. Alliance leader He-Shan, my country's dragon power is also decreasing. Mine too, it's decreasing rapidly. Why did the Fire Dragon Empire suddenly attack and kill so many of our people? The emperors were shocked. They didn't expect that they couldn't find Yi Hao after searching for several days. Yi Hao actually attacked them first. Your Majesty, demonic beasts, there are so many demonic beasts. At this moment, the door of the main hall was suddenly pushed open, and a general shouted in panic. Demonic beasts? What demonic beasts? How could there be demonic beasts in this mystic realm? Hearing the general's words, the emperors discussed among themselves. They were all puzzled and nervous at the same time. After all, what was decreasing was their country's dragon power, which was the most precious thing in a country. Every time, hundreds and thousands of demonic beasts fell. Although they all had tens of millions of dragon power, they couldn't withstand such a drop. Everyone looked at the general anxiously. What's going on? Tell me in detail. Emperor Hashan asked sternly. Seeing Emperor Hishan's unfriendly tone, the general trembled and immediately said, Countless demonic beasts rushed out of nowhere. They are all at the peak of the martial sage realm. They kill anyone they see. Our soldiers can't stop them at all. What? Peak martial sages? Where did so many powerful demonic beasts come from? When the emperors heard the general's words, they were all in disbelief. How many demonic beasts are there? Emperor Hashan's face turned ashen as he asked in a deep voice. He didn't have time to think about where these powerful demonic beasts came from. There are at least a few thousand of them. The general thought for a moment and said, A few thousand demonic beasts and peak martial sages? Are you sure you're not joking? The emperors were all shocked and asked the general. If there were only a few dozen peak martial sages, they could still accept it. But there were too many of them. There were a few thousand of them. If it was an Emperor Wu-level magical beast or a Martial Emperor-level magical beast, they could still barely accept it. But those were thousands of demonic beasts at the peak of the Martial Saint realm. At the very most, there were less than 30 Martial Sacred Realm cultivators present. How were they supposed to play like this? I think we should just surrender and admit defeat. Judging from the situation, even if I don't admit defeat, I'll still be waiting for death. I might as well just surrender. I don't want to fight anymore. The emperors were in low spirits as they spoke anxiously. After all, if they were delayed for even a second, their dragon power would plummet. The decrease in dragon power was akin to cutting their hearts. Why are you panicking? Hearing the emperor's words, Emperor Hashan was enraged and roared, Besides, we've already started a war of attrition. Do you think the Fire Dragon Empire will let us go if we surrender? Upon hearing Emperor Hashan's words, everyone quieted down. They couldn't surrender even if they wanted to. At this moment, they regretted joining Emperor Hashan's camp. If they hadn't joined Emperor Hashan's camp, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Everyone looked at Emperor Hashan anxiously and clamored to be the first to speak. Emperor Hashan, we're here to help you. What do you think we should do now? We don't want our dragon power to disappear completely. We can't destroy the empire. Emperor Hashan, think of a way. It wasn't just the emperors. Even the generals of the 3 imperial empires looked at Emperor Hashan threateningly. Emperor Hashan, you have to bring us out safely. If we suffer heavy losses, Emperor Wen won't spare you. Emperor Wen's generals threatened him without holding back. Hearing Emperor Wen's generals' words, Emperor Hashan's face turned even uglier. He didn't care about the words of the other emperors. However, he had to listen to the words of the 3 imperial empires. Everyone be quiet. Emperor Hashan immediately signaled for everyone to be quiet. Everyone, think carefully. We have 900 million soldiers. Although they have a few thousand martial saint demonic beasts, they aren't demonic beasts. As long as they are demonic beasts, they aren't undefeatable. Since we can't win with our strength, we'll fight with our numbers. I don't believe that 900 million soldiers can't defeat a few thousand demonic beasts. Emperor Hashan scanned the crowd and encouraged them. As expected, the emperors calmed down and weren't as panicked as before. Some of them even nodded, thinking that what he said made sense. So we might as well fight it out with the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's see if their few thousand demonic beasts or our 900 million soldiers are stronger. Emperor Hashan's eyes shone brightly as he shouted passionately. That's right. Since it's already like this, we'll just be waiting for death. Let's fight it out with the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's fight it out with the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's show them the might of the He-Shan camp. I agree too. Let's fight to the death with the Fire Dragon Empire. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. Following which, the emperors shouted loudly, looking as if they were going to risk it all. Because even if they didn't risk it all, they had no choice. They couldn't surrender and could only burn their boat. Moreover, a few thousand peak martial saint demonic beasts looked very terrifying. However, 900 million soldiers weren't weak either. After all, these 900 million soldiers were the elites of the imperial empires and the 3 imperial empires. Their fighting strength was also extraordinary. Moreover, with 900 million soldiers, they might be able to defeat a few thousand demonic beasts. Good. Then it's decided. Everyone, lead your soldiers and kill the demonic beasts. Emperor Hashan immediately ordered. I'm afraid you won't be able to lead your soldiers. Just as the emperors were about to agree and walk out of the main hall, Yi Hao's voice suddenly came from the sky. The emperors' expressions changed and they were shocked. They immediately looked up into the sky. Rumble! Suddenly, a large hole was smashed open in the 300-meter-tall golden palace. Crackling sounds could be heard as some black objects fell down. The emperors immediately dodged them. You? Who are you? Looking at the black corpses on the ground, the emperors' faces turned pale. Because those black figures were the martial saints of the He-Shan camp. Now, all of them were here and they were all beaten half to death. Do you still need to ask who I am? Yi Hao walked directly to the emperors. The emperors immediately opened up a path. It wasn't that they wanted to, but they couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts. Their legs didn't listen to them. The emperors looked at Yi Hao with a trace of fear in their eyes. They looked at Yi Hao as he walked towards Emperor Hashan. Chapter 533. Yi Hao glanced at Emperor Hashan and said rudely, "Get down." Why should I? In front of so many emperors, how could he stand up just because he wanted to? Wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Why should I? Yi Hao sneered and clapped his hands. Emperor Hashan was stunned. He didn't understand what Yi Hao meant. Squeak, squeak, squeak. What's that sound? The emperors looked around, wanting to know what was making that sound. Hashan, alliance leader, under your feet. Suddenly, one of the emperors pointed at Emperor Hashan and said nervously. Everyone immediately looked at Emperor Hashan's feet and saw 2 rat heads that were a few meters long. They were drooling as they looked at Emperor Hashan. Emperor Hashan was also shocked. Sensing the cultivation of the 2 heaven-devouring rats, Emperor Hashan knew that his cultivation was definitely not on par with these 2 heaven-devouring rats. Is this enough? Yi Hao asked with a smile. Emperor Hashan was speechless. However, in front of these 2 heaven-devouring rats that were drooling over him, he still said unwillingly, "Yes." "Then get the hell out of here!" Yi Hao roared. Emperor Hashan was very unhappy. However, he was not as strong as Yi Hao and could only walk down the dragon throne. Eat it! With Yi Hao's command, he swallowed the dragon throne in an instant. Seeing the heaven-devouring rats' actions, the emperors swallowed their saliva. Yi Hao took out the dragon throne and sat on it lazily. He narrowed his eyes and looked at everyone. Although they saw Yi Hao's lazy appearance, they couldn't resist the majesty in Yi Hao's eyes. Everyone looked at Yi Hao guiltily. They wanted to know what Yi Hao wanted to do. After a long time, just as everyone was getting impatient, Yi Hao suddenly asked, "I heard that you guys have been quite troublesome these past 3 months. You've been constantly provoking the Fire Dragon Empire?" Hearing Yi Hao's cold voice, everyone felt as if they had been placed in an ice cave. Everyone's faces turned pale. They knew that it was finally time to settle the score. "I've lost this time. What do you want to do? Tell me," Emperor Hashan said directly. It's nothing more than destroying the empire, Yi Hao said as if it was something insignificant. Destroying the empire. If that's nothing, what could be more ruthless than that? What do you think? Yi Hao asked. Everyone has seen it. Since things have come to this, we have no choice but to fight it out with him. Emperor Heshan immediately said, stirring everyone's emotions. Your Majesty Yanlong, did you see that? This was Emperor Heshan's own idea. It has nothing to do with us. That's right, Your Majesty Yanlong. We have absolutely no ill intentions towards you. It was Emperor Heshan who forced us to do this. Your Majesty Yanlong, if you want to blame someone, blame Emperor Heshan. Please don't blame us. To Emperor Heshan's surprise, the emperors ignored him and smiled at Yi Hao. Upon hearing the emperor's words, Emperor Heshan's face instantly turned ashen. Emperor Heshan pointed at the emperors angrily. You bunch of ingrates! How dare you turn your backs on us? I won't let you off so easily. This person is simply too annoying. I don't want to see him. Yi Hao glanced at Emperor Heshan and said in a displeased tone. Upon hearing Yi Hao's words, the emperors immediately understood what Yi Hao meant. Moreover, being called ingrates by Emperor Heshan really made them feel a little displeased and embarrassed. Kill him! Someone shouted. The emperors all picked up their weapons and charged at Emperor Heshan. A bunch of fence-sitters. How dare you act so rashly? You don't know what's good for you. Emperor Heshan snorted coldly as he looked at the emperors charging at him. No matter how weak he was still a peak martial sage. None of the emperors present was a match for him. In the blink of an eye, 3 emperors had been defeated by him. The more the emperors fought, the more ferocious they became. Dozens of them directly engaged in battle. Activate the killing formation! Emperor Heshan suddenly roared. The emperors suddenly turned their spears and pointed at Yi Hao. So you have a backup plan? Yi Hao was slightly surprised as he looked at the emperors. Seeing Yi Hao's surprised expression, Emperor Heshan couldn't help but laugh coldly. You're still too naive. Do you really think that we'll turn against each other so easily? Kid, you're still no match for Emperor Heshan. Emperor Heshan had already expected you to do this. What do you think now? Little bastard, weren't you very arrogant? Show me what you've got now. The emperors kept changing their positions as they mocked Yi Hao. This killing formation should be able to deal with a beginner martial god. It seems like you've put in a lot of effort. Yi Hao glanced at the killing formation formed by the emperors. You're quite knowledgeable, kid. It would have taken a lot of effort to deal with you. I didn't expect you to be so arrogant and walk right into our trap. Emperor Heshan sneered. If Yi Hao had been under the protection of many demonic beasts, it would have been very difficult for them to form a killing formation and kill Yi Hao. However, it was different now. They could easily kill Yi Hao and then deal with the demonic beast. It seems like you think you've won. Yi Hao smiled and looked at Emperor Heshan. Emperor Heshan also responded with a cold smile. What else? Ha ha ha! Yi Hao suddenly stood up and laughed loudly. The emperors were shocked by his laughter. One of them shouted, What are you laughing at? A bunch of idiots! After Yi Hao finished speaking, he ignored the others and walked out of the hall. You want to leave? Go to hell! Emperor Heshan shouted. The emperors immediately charged at Yi Hao. How dare you hurt my lord? You're courting death! Suddenly, a cold shout came from the hall. The emperors were shocked. They didn't expect that there would be someone else in the hall. Kill him first! Heshan shouted at the emperors when he saw Gui Yifan suddenly appear. He knew that Gui Yifan couldn't be underestimated and immediately shouted at the emperors. A bunch of trash! Gui Yifan's figure flashed and the others couldn't see him. In the next instant everyone was sent flying. How powerful! He's definitely not a martial god below the 3rd order. Emperor Heshan panicked. Because this killing formation could barely deal with a 3rd order martial god, but it couldn't deal with Gui Yifan. Therefore, he knew that Gui Yifan was definitely stronger than a third-order martial god. "I regret it!" Emperor Hashan shouted. His face was filled with unwillingness. The reason for that was because this killing formation had originally required the 30-odd martial sages to bring out its strongest battle prowess. The one who should be defeated now should be Gui Yifan and not them. Chapter 534. Just as everyone was puzzled, more than 10 people suddenly appeared in the main hall. The emperors looked carefully. The more they looked, the more shocked they became. Because these people were all in the martial god realm. Emperor Hashan's entire face turned snow-white. He muttered in disbelief, "Impossible, this is impossible, this is definitely not true, kill them." After Yi Hao finished speaking, he left the main hall. In an instant, the gods attacked and all the emperors fell. Even before they died, the emperors still had a look of disbelief on their faces. They were roaring in their hearts. What kind of existence did they provoke? The demonic beasts around them were all at the peak of the martial saint realm, and there were thousands of them. And this was without them knowing that Yi Hao had released another 10,000 demonic beasts. There were even more than 10 martial gods beside him. Which faction's young master was this to be able to have such a big lineup? And after the emperors died, the secret realm became a one-sided massacre. 8,000 ancient demonic beasts and 6,000 sky-devouring rats killed the 900 million soldiers, causing them to cover their heads and flee like rat. As long as the ancient demonic beasts and sky-devouring rats appeared, they would definitely be killed without leaving a single armor behind. Each attack of the ancient demonic beasts and sky-devouring rats could take away dozens of lives. Destroying a small team of 1,000 people was something that happened in the blink of an eye. Even if the He-Shan camp had 900 million soldiers, they would not be able to withstand such a battle. At this moment, on the dynasty battle list, no one could clearly see the dragon power column behind the He-Shan camp and Yen Long's camp. This was because the speed of the decrease and increase of the dragon power, as well as the changes in the numbers, were completely indiscernible. What exactly is happening in this secret realm? Could it be that the He-Shan camp is playing with suicide? The crowd were all making guesses. They were completely unable to imagine what could have caused such a situation. Even in the history of the Myriad Kingdom continent, such a thing had never happened. No, it had happened not long ago, and it was also caused by the Fire Dragon Empire. Everyone was puzzled. What kind of divine being was this Fire Dragon Empire? Boom! Emperor Hashan's dynasty will be destroyed. Everyone suddenly heard a clap of thunder and immediately looked up, only to see a few blood-red words written on the imperial ranking board, shocking people to the core. Emperor Hashan was destroyed so quickly. At this moment, everyone was staring at the imperial dynasty rankings, unable to come back to their senses for a long time. Everyone looked at the dynasty ranking board and felt that it was a little unreal. Rumble, the Tao dynasty is destroyed. Honglong, the Pan dynasty is destroyed. Rumble, the Black Gold Empire is destroyed. The thunderclaps in the sky did not stop. While everyone was still in a daze, a total of 37 thunderclaps sounded. Everyone looked at the dynasty leaderboard and saw a series of information about the destruction of countries. At that moment, their feelings were indescribable. So many countries had been destroyed at once, and most importantly, it was done by a single faction. Even if it wasn't recorded in the annals of history, it was unlikely. This was simply a heaven-shaking miracle. Everyone thought about it. Previously, Emperor Hashan had provoked Yen Long's camp, and now, his country had been destroyed. Previously, He Shan's camp's actions were like clowns. It was incomparably laughable. They weren't afraid of you at all. They just couldn't be bothered to fight with you. How about it? Now you know the pain. At this moment, everyone pointed their spears at He Shan's camp without holding back. If Emperor Hashan knew what everyone was thinking at this moment, he would probably die from anger. Rumble! Suddenly, An even louder clap of thunder pulled everyone back from their discussion. Everyone immediately looked at the dynasty leaderboard again. Then, their gazes were completely fixed on the dynasty leaderboard. Emperor Wen's dynasty is destroyed. What? Even the Emperor dynasty is destroyed? What exactly happened in the secret realm? Everyone looked at the dynasty leaderboard. There were only 2 emperor dynasties left in He Shan's camp. Sure enough, as everyone expected, the 2 imperial empires soon showed signs of being destroyed. A country with 14 dragon power had destroyed a camp with 900 million people. At this moment, everyone still felt that it was too unreal. However, the dynasty leaderboard was definitely not fake. Regardless of whether they believed it or not, they had to believe it because the dynasty leaderboard was definitely not fake. This Fire Dragon Empire is indeed worthy of the word empire. It's definitely the biggest dark horse in this Myriad Kingdom banquet. Oh my god, this is simply too exciting. This battle will definitely be recorded in the annals of history for future generations to admire. This Myriad Kingdom banquet really wasn't a waste of time. I just want to know where this Fire Dragon Empire is. Why do I want to join so much? What a coincidence. Me too. Can you bring me along? I also want to join the Fire Dragon Empire. At this moment, Yi Hao was in the secret realm. He would never have thought that his actions at this moment would accidentally cause a wave of people to join the Fire Dragon Empire. Countless cultivators began to search for the Fire Dragon Empire's location, begging to join the Fire Dragon Empire. At this moment, everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire was even more excited. Long live His Majesty! His Majesty is simply too powerful. I wonder how His Majesty did it. I live and die as a member of the Fire Dragon Empire. I will die as a ghost of the Fire Dragon Empire. It's definitely our honor to have such a majesty. I can't take it anymore. I want to bear His Majesty's children. His Majesty is invincible. Let's see who dares to bully our Fire Dragon Empire in the future. Wasn't that He Shan camp very powerful previously? Didn't they still get wiped out by His Majesty? Let's see if they still dare to show off. Old son, I have a feeling that I'm dragging His Majesty down. Me too. At this moment, the Fire Emperor and Emperor's son were looking at the dynasty leaderboard and swallowed their saliva as they spoke. The two of them felt as if they had been on a roller coaster ride. However, they were completely numb now. Thinking back, they didn't believe in Yi Hao previously. What a slap to their faces now. If I had known, I would have followed His Majesty. I want to see how His Majesty did it. At this moment, the two of them were filled with regret. They regretted not following Yi Hao to see this historical moment happen. Alright, stop lamenting. Our next task is very important. Chen Ziqiao interrupted the two of them. Looking at their stunned faces, Chen Ziqiao said in annoyance, His Majesty wiped out so many countries in the mystic realm. Do you think these countries will let it go so easily? Hearing Chen Ziqiao's words, their expressions changed. They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Although these countries were wiped out, it was only the disappearance of their dragon power. And these countries in the real world hadn't been completely wiped out yet. Although the disappearance of their dragon power would cause these countries' morale to drop. But a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even a cornered dog will jump over a wall. Chapter 535. Then what are we waiting for? Let's kill them before they react. The Fire Emperor pulled out his weapon. That's right. Let's kill them first and talk later. Emperor's son agreed. They finally understood why Yi Hao didn't bring them along. Instead, he had them stay near the He Shan camp. It turned out that Yi Hao had already predicted this from the start. Then let's compete and see who can reclaim more land. Chen Ziqiao laughed. At this moment, he was treating the He Shan camp's land as his own. There's no time to lose. Let's do it. Old Chen, if you lose, you have to treat us to wine. The Fire Emperor couldn't help but lick his lip. "Oh, so you're still thinking about this bit of wine. This is the Lord's wine. I can't make the decision." Chen Ziqiao laughed. "When the time comes, we'll reclaim these lands and ask for a reward from the Lord." Emperor's son immediately said, "All right then, let's begin." The Fire Emperor finished speaking and took the lead to charge out. The army that was already prepared started moving. Originally, the Fire Empire only had 100 million soldiers. However, when they reclaimed Emperor Wu and the other empires, they expanded their army by 300 million soldiers. At this moment, the 400 million soldiers were like a sandstorm as they charged toward the imperial dynasty in the He-Shan camp. "Uncles, the enemy forces are too big. We have to split up." Since he had become Yi Hao's subject, the Fire Emperor no longer called Hu Ji and the others imperial uncles. "All right, wait for me to regroup. We can't lose to Chen Ziqiao and Emperor's son." Hu Ji and the others immediately shouted in response. One had to know that time was tight and the mission was heavy. The Emperor dynasty in the He-Shan camp, not including the 3 Emperor dynasties, probably had at least 3.4 billion soldiers. This was several times the number of soldiers of the Fire Dragon Empire. Luckily, they had listened to Yi Hao and gathered all their soldiers. The soldiers of the He-Shan camp were too spread out and didn't have a chance to regroup. Hence, they could only take advantage of this opportunity to wipe out all these empires. When the army gathered together, there would be hundreds of millions of them. They would definitely be able to wipe out these dynasties with the momentum of sweeping away fallen leaves. The Fire Emperor, Hu Ji, and the others immediately split into 5 groups and attacked the 5 empires. As for the Fire Emperor, Hu Ji, and the other 4, they broke through 5 imperial empires at lightning speed and destroyed 5 imperial capitals. Even so, the 5 empires were still completely dumbfounded. They didn't even know that the imperial capital had been destroyed. The first thing that the Fire Emperor did was to kill all the members of the imperial family and the ministers. Those who deserved to be killed were killed, and those who deserved to be captured. The remaining small fries simply couldn't cause too much of a stir. "Damned Fire Dragon Empire, die, die!" Emperor He-Shan roared like a madman within Emperor He-Shan's capital. The other emperors also had ugly expressions on their faces. At this moment, they had yet to recover from the blow of the destruction of their nation. They did not expect that their dynasty would be destroyed so quickly. This was the destruction of an empire. Thousands of years of foundation was destroyed in a day. They couldn't understand how it could happen in such a short time. Alliance leader He-Shan, what should we do now? There were still some emperors who asked unwillingly. "Everyone, please calm down. It's our fault. We didn't expect that kid to have so many experts by his side." Emperor He-Shan immediately calmed his anger and said, "It was as he said. He would never have thought that Yi Hao would have so many martial gods. If he had known that Yi Hao had so many martial gods at the start, he would never have gone against Yi Hao. But now, before they could even make a name for themselves, their country had already been destroyed. It would be difficult for him not to be ridiculed. Even so, he was still a little unwilling. He was unwilling to accept that his country was gone just like that. He was unwilling to accept that Yi Hao had stolen his limelight. Therefore, although he was filled with fear for Yi Hao, he was also filled with hatred for Yi Hao. At this thought, Emperor He-Shan said, "Everyone, now that things have come to this, are you willing to just let this matter go? Of course not. Otherwise, why would we still be here? That's right. That damned Fire Dragon Empire destroyed everything I had. How can I just let it go like that? When I think of that brat and his arrogant appearance, I want to pull out his tendons and drink his blood." The emperors said angrily, "Everyone, since things have come to this, why don't we fight them to the death?" Emperor He-Shan was very satisfied when he saw the emperor's emotional fluctuations. "Emperor He-Shan, what should we do?" The emperors immediately asked Emperor He-Shan. What we need to do now is to gather all the soldiers we can and slaughter the Fire Dragon Empire. Kill as many as we can. Since things have come to this point, what's there to be afraid of? Emperor Hashan said viciously. The emperors were shocked when they heard Emperor Hashan's words. They didn't expect Emperor Hashan to really fight to the death. However, Emperor Hashan's idea was indeed in line with everyone's wishes. Emperor Hashan immediately said, "At this moment, that brat must still be proud of killing us. Let's kill his people and teach him a lesson. Let's see if he's arrogant or not." Emperor Hashan glanced at everyone. "What do you all think?" The emperors looked at each other and agreed. "Let's do as the Alliance Master says. Kill everyone from the Fire Dragon Empire." "That's right. We can't do anything to him in the secret realm." "I don't believe that we can't do anything to him in the real world. Alliance Master Hashan, we'll do as you say. We're the closest to the Fire Dragon Empire. Let's teach them a lesson first." Hearing the Emperor's words, Emperor Hashan was immediately satisfied. "Good. You all will be the vanguard. We'll follow closely behind." Just as the Emperors were deep in discussion, a few people suddenly took out their sound transmission talismans. The Emperor's expressions changed. They had a bad premonition. This was because they took out emergency sound transmission talismans. If there wasn't anything serious, they definitely wouldn't use these sound transmission talismans. Crack! Suddenly, one of the emperors became dispirited after reading the sound transmission talisman. He directly crushed the sound transmission talisman in his hand. The other emperors weren't in a much better state. The emperors looked over in confusion. Emperor Hashan frowned and asked, "What happened?" The emperor who crushed the sound transmission talisman slowly raised his head and looked at Emperor Hashan. Then, he looked at the emperors. Seeing the confusion on the emperors' faces, he still answered, "My people sent news. Just now, a powerful army rushed into the imperial capital of our dynasty. All the troops were killed." After saying this, his body became like a deflated balloon. He started to become dispirited. Chapter 536. What was going on? The emperors couldn't believe that the Fire Dragon Empire could be so fast. They thought that the plan they had discussed was fast enough. If nothing went wrong, they would be able to deal a fatal blow to the Fire Dragon Empire. However, they had just finished discussing and something went wrong. How were they supposed to live? Emperor Hashan frowned. His face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. He looked at the other emperors and asked in a low voice, "What's going on with you guys?" The other emperors also looked gloomy and said, "Same for us. The imperial capital has been destroyed. Now the country is completely destroyed." "Who did it?" Emperor Hashan continued to ask. The emperors could clearly hear Emperor Hashan's voice as he gritted his teeth. "The Fire Dragon Empire," the emperors said in unison. Emperor Hashan's body suddenly trembled. Suddenly, Emperor Hashan spat out a mouthful of blood. The emperors immediately went up to support him out of concern. Why did it turn out like this? Do the heavens really want me to die?" Emperor Hashan held his chest unwillingly and roared into the sky. When the emperors saw Emperor Hashan's appearance, although they didn't want to admit it, they could only lower their heads because they weren't any better. "Quick, have all your troops retreat. We can't let them kill anymore. Otherwise, we'll really have nothing left." Emperor Hashan suddenly raised his head and said to the emperors anxiously. Hearing Emperor Hashan's words, the emperors immediately took out their respective voice transmission talismans and ordered their men to retreat. "Keep as many as you can. It's up to fate." Emperor Hashan sighed and thought to himself as he watched the emperor's actions. "Quickly retreat with me. This place isn't safe anymore. Reporting to your majesty, several of our cities have been attacked by an unknown army." As soon as Emperor Hashan finished speaking, a guard came in to report. The emperors looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. They didn't expect the Fire Dragon Empire to be so fast. The emperors were actually feeling bitter in their hearts. That was because they were all wondering what sort of existence they had provoked. Putting aside the fact that he had annihilated them in the secret realm, in the real world, he had even pursued them relentlessly, turning them into stray dogs. "Retreat," Emperor Hushan said through gritted teeth. The emperors then flew out of the palace. Emperor Hushan looked at his palace reluctantly. "Alliance Master Heshan, leave quickly," the emperors advised anxiously because they had already discovered that many cities were already burning with the flames of war. They couldn't help but be shocked by the speed of the Fire Dragon Empire's march, which could only be described as terrifying. In the secret realm, Yi Hao recalled all the ancient mutated beasts and sky-devouring rats, leaving only Gui Yifan. "Let's go," Yi Hao immediately said to Gui Yifan. "Yes," Gui Yifan replied and immediately flew into the void with Yi Hao. "My origin fragment, I'm coming," Yi Hao thought excitedly. Although the name, origin fragment, didn't sound good, it was still a part of the origin fragment. It was the origin power of the Myriad Lands continent. The two of them flew in front of the origin fragment again, and Yi Hao reached out to take it. "Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining the origin fragment. You have gained 300 million experience points. Please continue to work hard." What surprised Yi Hao was that even though he had obtained an incomplete origin fragment, he could still obtain experience points. Uproar. Suddenly Yi Hao felt the world shake. Yi Hao looked down and realized that the space below was rapidly collapsing and being destroyed. Could it be that this mystic realm was transformed from the essence fragments? Yi Hao guessed in his heart. In reality, Yi Hao didn't know that an origin fragment could support an area of an entire level. The origin fragment in Yi Hao's hand was the energy source that supported all the secret realms at the dynasty level. All the secret realms of the dynasty seemed to be separated and formed independent areas, but they were all connected. It was just that they couldn't sense each other. Therefore, Yi Hao's action at this moment was undoubtedly taking away the energy source of all the secret realms of the dynasty. Without the support of energy, these secret realms naturally couldn't support themselves. Not only the secret realm under Yi Hao's feet, but all the secret realms of the dynasty were rapidly collapsing at this moment. "Oh my God, what's going on? Why is the secret realm collapsing?" After all the forces of the dynasty were sent out of the secret realm, they were all still in shock. Everyone immediately cared about their own dragon power and looked towards the dynasty. In the end, everyone was dumbfounded because the imperial dynasty ranking had actually disappeared. Everyone immediately rubbed their eyes and looked at the sky again. They realized that it was indeed so. The other levels of the country board were still intact. Only the dynasty board wasn't in the sky, as if it had never appeared. This matter immediately spread throughout the entire continent. After all, the Myriad Country Board was the most straightforward place to understand the forces of the Myriad Country continent. At this moment, the disappearance of the Dynasty Board for no reason was definitely a big deal. The disappearance of the Dynasty Board was like a bolt of lightning that caused the entire continent to boil. All the forces were frantically investigating the reason for the disappearance of the Dynasty Board. "What's this door for?" At this moment, Yi Hao knew nothing about the outside world. He looked at the golden door beside him and was very curious. Should I go in or not? Yi Hao looked at the golden door in front of him. Behind the golden door was full of unknowns. Therefore, at this moment, he was very conflicted. Because behind the golden door might be full of danger, but it might also be full of opportunities. After all, he also didn't know what was behind the golden door. No matter how he looked at it, this golden door was a teleportation door. Yi Hao didn't know where this golden door would teleport him, and it was very likely that it would teleport him to a dangerous place. "Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining the mission. Do you accept it?" Just as Yi Hao was conflicted, the system's notification suddenly sounded. There's actually a mission? Yi Hao couldn't help but be curious about the mission that the system suddenly issued. He was curious about what mission the system would issue at this time. Mission requirement: host enters the golden door. Mission reward: origin fragment. After checking the mission, Yi Hao was delighted. He looked at the golden door excitedly and guessed, could it be that behind the golden door is another secret realm with origin fragment? Come in. Yi Hao made up his mind. Even if it was for the origin fragment, the dangers behind the golden door were worth it for him to enter. Looking at the golden door in front of him, Yi Hao was still a little nervous, but he was also filled with curiosity. This was human nature. They would be filled with curiosity and fear towards the unknown. Chapter 537. Kill them! Kill these bastards! After Yi Hao stepped through the golden door, he heard shouts in his head. Where are the shouts? Yi Hao became cautious and looked around. Where is this? Yi Hao realized that he was in the midst of a small team of 100 people. This small team of 100 people was chasing after a small team of 10 people. That small team of 10 people was desperately trying to escape, while the small team of 100 people was trying their best to catch up. Yi Hao didn't understand where he was. Brat, who are you? Why are you here? Suddenly, a loud shout sounded in Yi Hao's ears. Yi Hao snapped back to his senses and realized that he was surrounded by a small team of 100 people. One of them, who looked like a leader, was glaring at him. That small team leader looked at Yi Hao arrogantly. When he saw that Yi Hao didn't speak, he wanted to slap him. Kid, I'm asking you a question. Do you want to die? Leader, I don't think this kid is anything good. Let's just kill him. I think this kid is a spy from the enemy camp. We should interrogate him properly. The rest of the team looked at Yi Hao and started discussing. You're asking for death. Yi Hao looked at the small team leader's cultivation and realized that he was only at the marshal general level. How could he let him off so easily? He slapped him with the back of his hand. Slap. Whoosh. Yi Hao slapped the small team leader's face. The small team leader flew out and spun 360 degrees in the air. Bam! The small team leader fell to the ground. He couldn't be more dead. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for increasing his dragon power by 1. At the same time, the system notification sounded. I knew it. When he heard the system notification, Yi Hao knew that his guess was right. This was also a mystic realm. However, the level of this mystic realm didn't seem too high. Let me ask you, which force do you belong to? Yi Hao looked at the small team of 100 people who were in a daze and asked them. At this moment, the small team of 100 people only recovered from their shock when they heard Yi Hao's question. Oh my God, run! Suddenly, someone shouted. Everyone immediately scattered like birds and beasts, fleeing in all directions. Each and every one of them was only a beginner warrior, which meant that they had just become warriors. In their hearts, the small leader was already their guardian angel. He was already considered very powerful. But now, he had been slapped to death by Yi Hao. They had never seen such a scene before. At this moment, they wished they had 8 legs so that they could run faster. Sigh. Yi Hao sighed helplessly as he looked at the fleeing crowd. He was also unwilling to kill these people who did not even have the strength to truss up a chicken. After all, he did not have much enmity with them. However, these people were all dragon power. How could Yi Hao let them off so easily? Besides, they wouldn't really die if they killed these people in the secret realm, so Yi Hao didn't feel too guilty. In the blink of an eye, Yi Hao killed everyone except for one person. You? What are you trying to do? The guard who was caught by Yi Hao was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He asked in a panic and almost shouted. Tell me, what force are you from? Yi Hao continued to ask. He wanted to know which dynasty this secret realm belonged to. I am from the Pring dynasty, the guard answered nervously. Then you can die. After Yi Hao finished speaking, he easily killed the guard. Go, kill everyone. Yi Hao immediately released dozens of magical beasts. According to the dragon power of the dynasty, there should be more than 1,000 dragon power. Although compared to his current 900 million dragon power, it seemed pitiful. However, in Yi Hao's opinion, even a mosquito's leg was meat. He couldn't waste it. Moreover, there was more than one dynasty here. There were at least 20 of them. 20 dynasties added together, there would be at least 20,000 dragon power. Just as Yi Hao killed the previous 100 guards, the 10,000 Kingdoms continent was in an uproar again. Everyone was still puzzled by the disappearance of the dynasty list. Suddenly, 9 claps of thunder sounded in the sky. Everyone knew that the thunder of the 10,000 Kingdoms ceremony wouldn't sound casually. The more it sounded, the more important it was. In history, it only sounded 4 times at most. But this time, it sounded 9 times in a row. Everyone knew that something big was going to happen. Look, what is that? Suddenly, someone pointed to the sky. A blood-red giant list appeared in the sky. This blood-red giant list appeared in the middle of all the dynasty lists. It was even bigger than all the dynasty lists. The light of the giant red list instantly covered all the dynasty lists and reached the ground that everyone was looking at. Everyone was curious. What was this list that had never appeared before? Did it have anything to do with the disappearance of the dynasty list? Words appeared on it. Suddenly, someone saw it again. This time, no one cared because everyone's eyes were fixed on the giant red list and the golden words that gradually appeared on the list. Random entry. Everyone saw the 3 red words on the red list and didn't understand what it meant. Could it be that such a big commotion was given such an ordinary name? Just as everyone was curious about the meaning of this random entry into the leaderboard, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, someone noticed the matter on the dynasty list. Look at the dynasty list. There is a country's dragon power that is decreasing substantially. Just as everyone looked over, the random entry list suddenly shook with red light. 4 words appeared on the random entry list again. Fire Dragon Empire. What's going on? Why is it the Fire Dragon Empire? Why is the Fire Dragon Empire's name on the random entry list? What does the Fire Dragon Empire and the random entry list mean? I'm confused. Is there any record of this in history? Can you explain to us what it means to randomly enter the rankings? At this moment, everyone in the Myriad Kingdom continent was confused by this random entry into the leaderboard, because this had never appeared in the 10,000 Kingdoms continent before. Otherwise, if there were records in history, they wouldn't have to make such a fuss. Look at the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power. It's actually increasing. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in disbelief. Everyone was shocked and looked at the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power in disbelief. Behind the Fire Dragon Empire, there was a series of numbers. The numbers behind were increasing. 100, exactly 100. Suddenly, someone shouted loudly, which immediately aroused everyone's curiosity. What 100? Look at the Pring dynasty. Its dragon power decreased by 100. But the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power increased by 100. That person quickly said. How is this possible? Everyone's jaws dropped when they heard this. Chapter 538. Is this what it means to enter the list randomly? But how did he do it? Everyone finally understood what it meant to enter the list randomly. But then, they became even more confused and curious. Because in the Myriad Kingdom continent, such a thing has never happened before. No matter how one looked at it, this matter was so inconceivable, but it really happened. Everyone's feelings toward the Fire Dragon Empire could no longer be described with words. This was because the impact that the Flame Dragon Empire had brought upon them was simply too great. In the first round, they defeated Emperor Wu and the others. In the second round, they were even more heaven-defying. They used 14 dragon power points to fight against 900 million dragon power points and won miraculously. Before they could even catch their breath, Yi Hao actually made it into the list randomly. Everyone was suspecting whether the disappearance of the dynasty rankings was related to Yi Hao at this moment. Looks like this kingdom camp that was randomly entered is going to be unlucky, someone said regretfully. This was because Yi Hao did not even put 900 million dragon points in his eyes, and he had eaten all of it. This was only 20,000 or so dragon points, not to mention Yi Hao. Sure enough, in an instant, the two camps on the kingdom list were destroyed at the same time. Boom! Suddenly, there was a clap of thunder. Everyone looked over and realized that the kingdom list had disappeared just like the dynasty list. What's going on? Everyone's eyes widened. Looks like the disappearance of the dynasty list is related to the Fire Dragon Empire. Needless to say, it's definitely done by the Fire Dragon Empire. I'm just curious. How did he do it? Everyone looked at the kingdom list that disappeared, their hearts filled with curiosity and doubt. However, Wang Guobang's disappearance caused everyone to point their fingers at the Flame Dragon Empire. Because of the disappearance of the kingdom list, everyone guessed that the disappearance of the dynasty list must be related to Yi Hao. Go and find out where this Fire Dragon Empire is. At this moment, in the Four Demons Alliance, the Four Demons gods held an emergency meeting. Alliance Master, this Fire Dragon Empire definitely has an incredible secret. We must dig it out, the Western Demon God said immediately. Of course, but the other forces won't be idle either. We must act quickly. The Eastern Demon God stroked his white beard and said. After saying that, the Eastern Demon God closed his eyes and pondered. Then, his eyes lit up. Send me 10 Death God's emissaries. We must capture the Fire Dragon Empire's emperor. When everyone heard the Eastern Demon God's words, they were all shocked. Many people even fear when they heard the Death Emissaries. That was because, in their eyes, the emissaries of the Death God were not humans at all, but killing machines. All the emissaries of the Death God had to undergo devilish training from the moment they were born. It could be said that there were countless casualties, and those who survived were all elite. All the emissaries of the Death God had completely lost their ability to think. In their minds there was only obedience and slaughter. The average strength of an envoy of the Death God was around the 7th Order Martial God realm. The cultivation of many people present couldn't even compare to the Death God's emissaries. The Death God's emissaries didn't fear death and didn't feel pain. Unless they were killed, even 8th or 9th level martial gods might not be their opponent. The Death God's emissaries were the Four Demons Alliance's ultimate trump card. Normally, they wouldn't take action. Once they took action, there was no mission they couldn't complete. Moreover, all of them were difficult missions. But this time, the Eastern Demon God actually sent out 10 Death God's emissaries. It was obvious how important the Fire Dragon Empire was to him. Actually, the Eastern Demon God couldn't be blamed for this. He already saw a trace of danger from the Fire Dragon Empire. The Fire Dragon Empire's growth was too heaven-defying. Previously, it was only 14 dragon power points. Now, it had broken through to 900 million dragon power points. With another 100 million dragon power points, it could be promoted to a holy dynasty. Moreover, the disappearance of the dynasty ranking, as well as the appearance of random entrants, made him have to take it seriously. In the current Myriad Kingdom continent, the Four Demons Alliance was one of the strongest holy dynasties, excluding the godly nation. Therefore, he definitely couldn't let Yi Hao, this unstable factor, grow recklessly. This was also the unspoken rule of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Many old factions didn't want to see new factions grow. Therefore, they would definitely take measures. The new factions would either be destroyed, submit, or soar. Basically, the chances of submitting were the highest. But as long as they submitted, they would basically be exploited by the old factions. They would be completely turned into dogs without any power to resist. Therefore, many factions would rather die than submit. They were directly destroyed by the old factions. There was only a very, very small chance that they could soar to the top and destroy the old factions. The Four Demons Alliance was such an old faction. There were at least 8,000 factions that were destroyed by the Four Demons Alliance. There were also countless geniuses that were destroyed by the Four Demons Alliance. The remaining geniuses all became members of the Four Demons Alliance and worked hard for the Four Demons Alliance. There had never been anyone who could break free from the Four Demons Alliance's restraints. Otherwise, the Four Demons Alliance wouldn't exist. The most powerful one was the Devouring Demon God. The Devouring Demon God controlled countless powerhouses and almost destroyed the Four Demons Alliance. In the end, the Four Demons Alliance had to request for reinforcements to kill the Devouring Demon God. Therefore, from then on, the Four Demons Alliance became even more domineering. They only had one goal: either submit or be destroyed. And Yi Hao was targeted by the Four Demons Alliance. Things were not looking good for him. In everyone's opinion, no matter how jubilant Yi Hao was, there would only be two inevitable outcomes. He would either be destroyed or become a tool of the Four Demons Alliance. Alliance Master, this matter is different. It will probably cause a commotion, the Southern Demon God said worriedly. The Eastern Demon God also looked worried. The thing that the Southern Demon God was worried about was also what he was worried about, because the four god nations wouldn't easily make a move. But it was different this time. With such a big change, it would be difficult for the four god nations to not make a move. The disappearance of the dynasty rankings and dynasty rankings would definitely affect the future structure of the Myriad Kingdom continent. It was absolutely intolerable for the four god nations to be in control. But then, the Eastern Demon God thought of something. His brows relaxed and a cunning smile appeared on his face. Don't worry. I'm afraid the four god nations won't be free to deal with this matter for the time being. When everyone heard the Eastern Demon God's words, their hearts trembled. Because there was definitely a story behind the Eastern Demon God's words. But the matter of the four god nations wasn't something that people of their level could worry about. And from the looks of it, the Eastern Demon God didn't seem to want to talk about it. No matter how curious they were, no one dared to ask first. While they were talking, the 10 Death God's messengers had already appeared in the main hall. Gotcha! The sound of heavy metal rubbing against each other pierced everyone's eardrums. Everyone immediately looked up. The 10 Death God's messengers were already standing in the main hall, wearing heavy armor. The Death God's messengers' heavy armor covered their entire bodies. Behind them were blood-red cloaks. Chapter 539. The messengers of the Death God all wore metal masks on their faces. Even their eyes were completely covered, so it was impossible to see their true appearances. Every emissary of the Death God was full of mystery to everyone present. Only the Alliance Master could see the true appearances of these messengers of the Death God. The messengers of the Death God were filled with a murderous and bloody aura, which made many people present feel uncomfortable. Greetings, Alliance Master. The 10 messengers of the Death God's hoarse voices were like machines rubbing against each other. It made people shudder when they heard it. You all know my orders, right? The East Sha God looked at the 10 messengers of the Death God and asked in a dignified tone. At the same time, he looked at these messengers of the Death God with a smug look in his eyes. This was because these messengers of the Death God were personally trained by him. Yes. The 10 messengers of the Death God spoke simply, as if they were unwilling to say another word. Then go. If you fail the mission, you don't have to come back. Yes. The 10 messengers of the Death God clearly did not expect the East Sha God to give a death order. The East Sha God meant that if they failed to capture Yi Hao, they would have to die to atone for their sins. However, they were already used to such missions. In their dictionary there were only 2 possibilities. Either they completed the mission or they died. The 10 messengers of the Death God immediately turned and left. Their movements were not sloppy as they charged towards the Fire Dragon Empire. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining Origin Energy Fragments. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 100 million experience points. Yi Hao kept the Origin Energy Fragments in the Duchy region into the space. Instantly, the entire Duchy's secret realm collapsed. Yi Hao was already used to such scenes. Yi Hao looked at the void beneath his feet and stepped into the golden door beside him. Seeing the world in front of him, Yi Hao immediately released the ancient mutated beasts. Kill! Instantly, thousands of ancient mutated beasts charged out. Looks like this should be the Duchy region's secret realm. Yi Hao guessed as he sensed the martial power in the air. Now, he no longer needed to capture people to be able to determine the level of the secret realm he was in. Sure enough, a system notification rang out in his mind a moment later. Looks like it's still a little short. Looking at his dragon power, it was obvious that this secret realm could not allow his dragon power to break through to 1 billion points. I'm almost there. After a while, the notification in his mind stopped, and Yi Hao immediately rushed into the void. Fourth Origin Energy Fragments. Yi Hao looked at the Origin Energy Fragments in front of him. This was already the fourth Origin Energy Fragment. After collecting the Origin Source Fragment, Yi Hao immediately entered the Golden Door. Spirit Nation Region's fifth Fragment. Kingdom Region's Kingdom S Region, Emperor's Kingdoms here. Yi Hao's God to God to realm to of the earth gods of the world of gods territory. He God of the world's gods of the world gods to him, S's of the gods. God of the God of God of the God gods of the God of the God of the God of you of the. Yi Hao heard the notification in his mind and immediately retracted his foot from the God of God's kingdom. He said to the system, "Merge." Yi Hao looked into the infinite space ring and saw the dukedom's origin energy fragments, the marquisite's origin energy fragments, the kingdom's origin energy fragments, and the spirit nation's origin energy fragments instantly merged together. After a long time, the system notification sounded again. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 origin energy fragment. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining 3 origin energy fragments. The host is rewarded with a special gift pack. There's a special gift pack. Use it. Yi Hao immediately used the special gift pack. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Peak Martial God Composite Potion. Peak Martial God Composite Potion can be used on martial gods to break through to the Peak Martial God realm. Duration of use: half an hour. Good, not bad. Yi Hao was satisfied with this reward. After all, it was free. Yi Hao looked at the infinite space ring. There were already 3 origin energy fragments and 2 origin energy fragments. Obviously, the 2 origin energy fragments were not enough to merge together. Yi Hao retracted his gaze and immediately entered the secret territory of the Empire. I wonder how strong the Emperor forces in this secret territory are. To Yi Hao's surprise, the place where he appeared was empty. However, when Yi Hao felt the martial Dao energy in the air, he knew that the forces in this secret territory should not be too weak. One had to know that there were many Emperor forces that had martial saints and even low-level martial god. However, Yi Hao was still not afraid. He immediately summoned all of the ancient strange beasts. The ancient strange beasts immediately rushed out. What Yi Hao did not know was that this secret territory was the secret territory of the Azure Cloud Camp and the Icefield Camp. Among these 2 camps, the Azure Cloud Empire and the Icefield Empire were the 2 top empires in the Myriad Kingdom continent. These 2 empires had always been in a hostile state. Moreover, these 2 camps were the empires that had the most hope of becoming saint forces. What Yi Hao did not expect was that these 2 empires would come to a decision at this time and fight against each other in this competition. Not counting the forces in the same camp, just the Azure Cloud Empire and the Icefield Empire's Dragon Force had reached over 900 million Dragon Force points. As for the other camp's dragon force points, it had reached over 400,000 dragon force points. The two camps' dragon force points added up to more than 800,000 dragon force points. If Yi Hao knew about the secret territory he was in, he would definitely not be so careless as to release all of his ancient strange beasts. One had to know that the Azure Cloud Empire and the Icefield Empire were two of the top Emperor forces. Naturally, they would not be so simple. Icefield Emperor, it's time for us to fight to the death. At this time, on an ice field, a total of 4 billion elite soldiers were lined up neatly. The bearded and wild-looking Emperor Songyun was currently sitting on a 100-meter-long cloud eagle. The Azure Cloud Emperor was clad in red metal armor and held a huge red blade in his hand as he shouted arrogantly. If there was an expert present, they would be able to see that the Azure Cloud Emperor's cultivation had already reached second-order martial god realm. Even the Cloud Eagle he was sitting on had the strength of a first-order martial god. Roar! 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 The moment the Azure Cloud Emperor's voice fell, the 4 billion soldiers raised the ice blades in their hands and slapped their armor. They roared loudly and majestically. The roar of the 4 billion soldiers pierced through the clouds. It was enough to shake one's soul and make one's blood boil. Azure Cloud Alliance Master, in my opinion, why don't we attack directly and exterminate this group of bastards? One of the Azure Cloud Emperor camp's emperors immediately spoke. Chapter 540. Even without seeing his face, everyone could feel a powerful wave of chi surging toward them just by hearing his voice. The emperor who had just spoken was even more flustered. Large beads of sweat instantly covered his head. The reason for that was because he could sense that the aura of death was coming for him. Ice Origin Emperor is still so overbearing. Emperor Songyun was the leader of the Yun Tsang camp. He would not allow his ally to be bullied. That would be a slap to his face. Emperor Songyun released a strong energy before he finished his words. In the blink of an eye, the two forces collided, and it was a draw. Phew! The emperor who spoke earlier heaved a sigh of relief when he was saved. Because he was locked down by the Origin Emperor's aura, he could not even move, let alone resist. Yun Tsang Emperor, you are still so arrogant. The Ice Plain Emperor wasn't angry that his attack was blocked by the Azure Cloud Emperor. Instead, he spoke with a mocking tone. What is the meaning of this? Emperor Songyun frowned and asked in a thunderous voice. Sigh, I was praising you when I said that your intelligence was low. Ha 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 ha. The Ice Origin Emperor sighed as he mocked with a smile on his face, causing the crowd to burst out in laughter. You dare to humiliate me? You're courting death. Emperor Songyun roared furiously after being humiliated by the Ice Origin Emperor. He was a hot-tempered person. How could he tolerate Emperor Songyun's provocation? Armies, listen up. Emperor Songyun raised his blade. Ha! Hearing Emperor Songyun's words, the 4 billion soldiers pulled out their weapons and roared. Kill them! Emperor Songyun pointed his blade at the Ice Origin Empire. Ignorant fool, you entered my encirclement without realizing it. Emperor Songyun did not show any fear or nervousness when he saw Emperor Songyun's actions. Instead, he laughed. Alliance leader, you are so smart. Many emperors from the Ice Origin Empire praised. Emperor Songyun had already set up a trap around the Yun Tsang camp. He was just waiting for the Yun Tsang camp to enter. Emperor Songyun's eyes were filled with anticipation and joy. As long as the Yun Tsang camp entered his trap, he would win. He might even be able to get rid of Yun Tsang. However, at this moment, the cloud eagle that Emperor Songyun was sitting on suddenly let out a long cry. Halt and retreat. Hearing the long cry of the cloud eagle he was riding, Yun Tsang's heart instantly trembled, because he knew that the cloud eagle usually wouldn't carelessly cry out. Unless something big was going to happen. Right now, there were only 2 factions in the arcane realm, so he guessed that the cloud eagle must have discovered something from the Icefield Empire, which was why it was calling out. Could it be that they found out? That can't be. Seeing that Song Yun's camp had stopped attacking and was retreating, the smile on the Icefield Emperor's face disappeared. The Ice Plain dynasty carefully examined the entire process. They believed that they had done every step perfectly and did not make any mistake. But why would Song Yun's camp suddenly retreat? The Ice Origin King's gaze immediately swept towards the emperors behind him. Looking at the cold eyes of the Ice Origin King and the murderous aura on his body, the emperors shuddered. Alliance Master, you can't be suspecting us, right? We would never betray the Icefield faction. The emperors knew what the Ice Origin King was thinking and hurriedly explained. Cloud Eagle, what's going on? Emperor Song Yun looked at the Icefield faction suspiciously and asked the Cloud Eagle. There are many powerful auras coming towards us. We can't fight now, so we should be vigilant, the Cloud Eagle said. Hearing the Cloud Eagle's words, Yun Tsang clenched the giant blade in his hand and looked towards the Icefield faction. Could it be that the Icefield Emperor invited experts? Emperor Song Yun guessed, because it wasn't impossible. Thinking of this, Yun Tsang didn't dare to be careless and immediately ordered in a low voice, "Raise the alert of the three armies." Seeing the serious expression on Yun Tsang's face, the emperors didn't dare to be careless and looked around vigilantly. Alliance Master, let's fight. If we don't fight, this great opportunity will be gone. Seeing that the Song Yun's army was gradually retreating, the emperors of the Icefield faction couldn't help but speak anxiously. Bing Yuan was also hesitant because he didn't know what was going on and why Yun Tsang would suddenly retreat, so he didn't dare to be careless. He was also afraid that there was a trap. No rush, let's wait and see. Bing Yuan waved his hand. The Song Yun's army had 4 billion soldiers. How could they retreat in such a short period of time? Bing Yuan narrowed his eyes as he looked at the Song Yun's army. The emperors and generals beside him had anxious expressions. After waiting for a long time, the Icefield Emperor didn't see any other movements from the Song Yun's army and finally gave the order, "All armies, attack." He also didn't want to see the fat meat that was already in his mouth lose just like that. After all, who cared if Yun Tsang had a trap or not? He would only know after trying. Yes, the emperors of the Icefield faction were delighted, but before they could give the order, roar. Suddenly, the roar of a beast came from afar. The roar of the beast was filled with energy. Before anyone could see where it came from, they could feel their eardrums ringing. Wait, what's that sound? Hearing the roar, the Icefield Emperor immediately stopped the emperors from giving the order and asked anxiously. It sounds like the roar of a demonic beast. Someone said uncertainly, "Roar, roar, roar." Suddenly, the roar of the beast came again, and it was continuous. The emperors identified the direction of the roar and were startled. "Alliance Master, the roar seems to be coming from behind us, and it seems like there are quite a few of them," they hurriedly said in a panic. "Damned Yun Tsang, he actually deliberately attracted my attention and attacked from behind." The Icefield Emperor was enraged. He naturally thought that the ancient demonic beasts behind him were created by Emperor Yun Tsang. Because from what he saw, there were only 2 factions in the secret realm. He didn't create any demonic beasts, so it must be Emperor Yun Tsang who did it. It was a pity that he still didn't know what was happening outside the secret realm. Otherwise, he would know that the Fire Dragon Empire was here. He wouldn't have jumped to the conclusion that these ancient demonic beasts were created by Emperor Yun Tsang. "Alliance Master, what should we do now?" The emperors immediately looked at the Icefield Emperor anxiously. "I didn't expect that we would be schemed against by others." The Icefield Emperor coldly snorted, "Since things have come to this, let's fight to the death. Pass down my order, gather the 3 armies and destroy Yun Tsang's faction. Don't worry about the rear for now," the Icefield Emperor immediately ordered. From what he saw, the army in front of him was the backbone of Yun Tsang's faction. As long as they destroyed Yun Tsang's faction, the demonic beasts behind them would naturally be destroyed. The main thing was that he didn't know how many ancient demonic beasts were behind them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given such an order so naturally. Chapter 541. Alliance Leader. The roar of the beasts seems to be coming from the back of the Ice Plains camp? The emperors of Yun Tsang's camp all had strange expressions on their faces. They all looked at Yun Tsang suspiciously, guessing whether or not this was Yun Tsang's trump card. Yun Tsang's face was also filled with confusion because he knew that these beasts had nothing to do with him. He originally thought that these beasts were used by the Ice Plains king to deal with him. But from the looks of it, the situation didn't seem right. He couldn't figure out what was going on, and he also suspected that this was the Ice Plains king's scheme. But no matter what kind of scheme it was, there was no way he would use a group of beasts to attack his own people, unless the Ice Plains king's brain was damaged. If the Ice Plains king knew what Yun Tsang was thinking, he would probably bleed from anger. Kill! Suddenly, an earth-shattering roar came from all around, interrupting Yun Tsang's thoughts. Alliance Leader, this is bad, we seem to be surrounded. The emperor's faces changed as they hurriedly said, "What are you panicking for?" Yun Tsang angrily rebuked, "Tell our subordinates not to panic, continue to retreat." Although Yun Tsang looked simple and crude, it didn't mean that he was stupid. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to sit in his current position. And no matter how he looked at it, he felt that today's matter was a little strange, so he didn't want to continue attacking. "Follow me and break out." Yun Tsang collected his thoughts and immediately retreated with the emperors. "Kill!" Yun Tsang roared as the cloud eagle he was sitting on flapped its wings, creating two tornadoes that sent hundreds of people from the Ice Plains camp flying. Yun Tsang himself was even more ferocious as he charged into the crowd like a ferocious tiger. The giant blade in his hand was constantly changing, and every time it was swung, it would take away countless lives. In his eyes, these elite soldiers of the Ice Plains camp were like weeds that he could slaughter at will. This wasn't because the Ice Plains camp wasn't strong enough, but because Yun Tsang's battle strength was just too strong. And the more Yun Tsang fought, the fewer Ice Plains soldiers around him. No one dared to fight with him, because if they did, they would just be sending themselves to their death. Yun Tsang, what's the point of bullying these soldiers? Fight me if you have the ability. When he saw Yun Tsang slaughtering unscrupulously in his own troops, he was almost torn apart in his encirclement by Yun Tsang. The Ice Origin King naturally could not allow him to continue like this. He immediately rushed towards Yun Tsang. "Let's fight then. Do you think that this emperor is afraid of you?" The gigantic blade in Yun Tsang's hands reaped the lives of countless people as he stared at the Ice Origin Emperor with a bloodthirsty gaze. "Come, little brat Bing Yuan. Let this emperor see if you've grown," Yun Tsang roared. Waves of energy rolled out from his body as he charged at the Bing Yuan king with his giant blade. Yun Tsang's movements were swift and decisive, and he did not bother to hide his martial power at all. It was as if he wanted to kill the Ice Origin King in one fell swoop. Although the two nations had always been in a hostile state, this was the first time that the two emperors had actually used their swords and spears. Seeing Yun Tsang's ferocious attacks, the Ice Origin King did not show any weakness. Wielding his three-pointed, double-edged spear, he directly met the attacks head-on. Boom! When the two of them collided, a shock wave spread out in all directions. Mountains and rivers immediately shattered. Countless soldiers who were unable to dodge in time were directly smashed into meat paste. The two emperors both retreated several steps. It was actually impossible to determine who was stronger. The two emperors got into position and began fighting again in the blink of an eye. As for the soldiers of the two camps, they were both shocked and filled with worship as they watched the two emperors fight. However, without exception, they all stayed as far away as they could even if they had to fight. They were afraid that the two emperors would accidentally injure them again. At this time, the two camps were in a deadlock. Neither side could do anything to the other. Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan were even more so. The two of them were evenly matched, and it was impossible to determine a victor in a short time. It's so lively. Yi Hao suddenly appeared in the air above the two camps. When Yi Hao saw this army of close to 8 billion soldiers, he was also filled with envy. After all, this was all dragon energy. Who are you? Upon hearing Yi Hao's voice, the two emperors stopped fighting at the same time, even though they were still fighting. They were on guard against the other party while looking at Yi Hao. My surname is Wu. My name is Fu Qing, Yi Hao said with a smile. Father Wu. The two emperors frowned and muttered at the same time. Lad, you are courting death. How dare you humiliate me? Go to hell. The two emperors immediately reacted. They shouted angrily and attacked Yi Hao at the same time. No matter what, they were martial gods and emperors of empires. How could they tolerate being humiliated by a lad? Therefore, the two emperors only had one goal, which was to capture this reckless lad and tear him into pieces. Why aren't you protecting me? Yi Hao shouted calmly when he saw the two emperors charging at him aggressively. Suddenly, a row of figures appeared in front of them. The two emperors immediately stopped and looked at the figures. After a glance, a thought appeared in their minds: run! It's too late to run now. Yi Hao's mocking voice rang in their ears. The two emperors' expressions changed instantly. They were surrounded by 4 or 5 martial gods. Yun Tsang, are they your men? Emperor Bing Yuan asked Emperor Yun Tsang through telepathy. Look at my situation. How could they be my men? Yun Tsang asked with a bitter expression. Who are you? The two emperors asked at the same time. Didn't I tell you? My name is Wu Fu Qing. Yi Hao said with a smile. The two emperors' faces turned pale. Obviously, they would not fall for Yi Hao's trick and let Yi Hao take advantage of them again. Alright, do you choose to have fun? Or do you choose to have unpleasant fun? What do you mean by pleasant fun? The two emperors immediately asked when they heard Yi Hao's question. Pleasant fun means that you will kill yourselves and save me the trouble of killing you. The two emperors' faces turned gloomy when they heard Yi Hao's words. The two emperors gritted their teeth and stared at Yi Hao. They continued to ask, what about unpleasant fun? Then I will have to trouble my men to do it personally. However, I guarantee that it will be more painful than suicide. Yi Hao continued to speak with a smile, as if he did not see the two emperors' eyes. Do you think that you can do whatever you want just because you have more than 10 martial emperors? Emperor Bing Yuan looked at Yi Hao with a sneer. You want me to kill myself? You must be dreaming. Emperor Yun Tsang said with disdain. Although Yi Hao has more than 10 martial gods, they are all initial stage martial gods. On the other hand, they have nearly 8 billion soldiers. Therefore, they are not completely afraid of Yi Hao. They are confident that their soldiers will be able to kill Yi Hao and Yi Hao's men. Who said that I only have more than 10 martial gods? Yi Hao looked at the two emperors with a smile. Chapter 542. Brat, could it be that you have martial gods? Then you don't have to hide anymore. Let them come out. Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan looked around vigilantly. I don't have any martial gods. Yi Hao shrugged. When the two emperors heard that there were no martial gods, they heaved a sigh of relief. But I have martial sages. Yi Hao said with a smile. Ha ha. Martial sages. Bring as many as you have. Yun Tsang laughed arrogantly. He did not put the martial sages in his eyes at all. Bing Yuan also showed a disdainful expression because they also had many martial sages in their faction. Soldiers, attack! Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan shouted furiously and ordered the soldiers of the 3 armies. Kill! When the soldiers of the 2 camps heard Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang's words, they rushed towards Zhuge Liang and the others. Zhuge Liang and the others calmly faced the incoming soldiers without panicking. With just a wave of his hand, he was able to kill a large number of soldiers. Soldiers of Yun Tsang's camp, listen up. Even if I die, you must attack. Otherwise, you will be punished by military law. Those who kill these martial gods will be conferred the title of Marquis, and will be greatly rewarded. At this moment, Yun Tsang threw caution to the wind. He only had one goal now. At worst, he would fight to the death. As a martial god, he naturally knew that martial gods were powerful, but they were not invincible. As long as there were enough people, they could exhaust them to death. Bing Yuan's camp is the same. Fight to the death. Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang agreed and gave the same order. Fight to the death. The soldiers of the three armies shouted and started to form a formation. They continuously rushed towards Zhuge Liang and the others. Ignorant brat, today I will show you the price of arrogance, Bing Yuan said coldly. When your men are killed, I hope you won't cry. Yun Tsang looked at Yi Hao mockingly. Ha ha! Yi Hao looked at Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan's proud faces, and could not help but laugh loudly. Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan immediately looked at each other and asked, "What are you laughing about?" Yi Hao summoned the heavenly dragon throne and lay down on it. He closed his eyes and ignored the two emperors. We are actually being ignored. The two martial monarchs felt like their hearts had suffered a great blow. They did not expect to be ignored by Yi Hao. Brat, don't be so arrogant. Yun Tsang had a fiery temper. How could he accept Yi Hao's disregard? He picked up his giant blade and charged at Yi Hao. Kneel! Yi Hao suddenly widened his tiger-like eyes and directly let out an explosive shout. His eyes shot out a dignified light that could not be looked down upon as he looked towards Yun Tsang. Yun Tsang didn't know why, but when Yi Hao looked at him like this, he actually felt scared. He is merely a martial emperor. Why would I be afraid of him? After seeing Yi Hao's cultivation, Yun Tsang immediately threw the fear in his heart to the back of his mind. Die! Yun Tsang's hand no longer stopped moving, charging straight for Yi Hao's head. It looked like it was going to chop Yi Hao and the heavenly dragon throne in half. Heavenly dragon defense! Yi Hao shouted when he saw that Yun Tsang was still attacking. Roar! Suddenly, the ordinary-looking heavenly dragon throne suddenly shot out a rainbow-colored light, and a rainbow-colored gigantic dragon's shadow appeared out of nowhere. The rainbow-colored gigantic dragon's shadow immediately coiled in front of Yi Hao. A dragon's roar resounded through the heavens and earth. What is this? Looking at the rainbow-colored gigantic dragon's shadow in front of him, the Bingyuan king's heart skipped a beat. But Yun Tsang did not care. What the hell is this? Break! Boom! The giant blade in Yun Tsang's hand slashed at the rainbow-colored gigantic dragon's head. The Bingyuan king looked at Yun Tsang nervously. He wanted to see if Yun Tsang could break through the rainbow-colored gigantic dragon's defense. When the giant blade in his hand slashed at the rainbow-colored gigantic dragon's body, the scene that Yun Tsang imagined of the rainbow-colored gigantic dragon collapsing did not happen. Instead, a huge impact came from his arms, causing his arms to feel numb. Kneel! Yi Hao suddenly shouted, as if he had already expected this to happen. As soon as Yi Hao finished speaking, the rainbow-colored gigantic dragon opened its mouth and roared as it charged at Yun Tsang. Boom! The rainbow-colored dragon smashed into Yun Tsang's body. Yun Tsang's expression immediately changed, and the giant blade in his hand was sent flying. Pfft! Yun Tsang vomited a mouthful of blood, but he quickly stabilized himself. Clenching his teeth, he unwillingly stood up. Fuck, I don't believe it! Yun Tsang roared. Another weapon appeared in his hand. But this time, the rainbow-colored dragon didn't even wait for him to attack. It directly pressed down on his head. Yun Tsang frowned. The pressure from the rainbow-colored dragon was causing his legs to lose control. I swear I won't kneel even if I die, roared Yun Tsang sinisterly. At the same time, His weapon fiercely stabbed at the rainbow-colored dragon's body. Heavenly spike slash! Yun Tsang roared in anger. The martial arts power around him instantly surged. The martial arts power in his body gathered at the tip of his weapon. The Heavenly Spike Slash was a low-tier heaven-class martial skill. By relying on it, Yun Tsang had killed countless experts stronger than himself. But the Heavenly Spike Slash consumed a considerable amount of martial energy. With his current cultivation, he could only use it 3 times in a short period of time. Originally, he had been planning on using the Heavenly Spike Slash to deal with the Ice Origin Emperor. He hadn't expected the rainbow-colored dragon to force him to use it ahead of time. How powerful! I didn't expect him to have such a trump card. Seeing Yun Tsang's Heavenly Spike Slash, the Ice Origin Emperor's heart pounded. Scram! Yun Tsang roared once more. His weapon once more attacked the rainbow-colored dragon's body. Seeing the Heavenly Spike Slash, the rainbow-colored dragon no longer underestimated Yun Tsang. It also roared furiously. In the blink of an eye, martial energy exploded like a bomb. The color of the sky changed, and even the ground caved in several hundred meters. Yi Hao and the Ice Origin Emperor immediately looked at the rainbow-colored dragon and Yun Tsang. They saw that the rainbow-colored dragon's image had become much more transparent. It was clear that the rainbow-colored dragon's strength had dropped by more than a level. As for Yun Tsang, he wasn't much better off. His armor had shattered, and even the weapon in his hand was gone. Yun Tsang's hair was disheveled, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Ice Origin, why aren't you doing anything? Are you waiting to reap the benefits? Yun Tsang looked angrily at the Ice Origin Emperor. Hearing Yun Tsang's words, the Ice Origin Emperor immediately felt embarrassed. After all, Yi Hao was their common enemy. He couldn't let Yun Tsang deal with him alone. Furthermore, Yun Tsang's injuries weren't light. It was time for him to make a move. Yun Tsang, what are you saying? Rest for a while. Watch me. After saying that, the Ice Origin Emperor raised his 3-pointed, double-edged spear and charged at the rainbow-colored dragon. Ice Origin Snow Seal. The Ice Origin Emperor didn't dare to hold back. He immediately used his trump card. He knew that if he didn't use his trump card, he would be looking for trouble. Chapter 543. The Icefield Emperor's Icefield Seal was also a heaven-class low-tier martial technique. This martial technique was so powerful that if a person's level was much lower than the Icefield Emperor's, their blood would instantly freeze within the range of the Icefield Seal. In serious cases, their soul would be frozen. If a martial artist's blood was frozen, they would lose their ability to move. If their soul was frozen, they could only face death. From this, one could see how powerful the Icefield Seal was. Seeing the Icefield Emperor's Icefield Seal, Yi Hao couldn't help but feel that the surrounding air was gradually becoming colder. It's actually snowing. Yi Hao looked at the sky in disbelief. There were actually snowflakes floating in the air. This martial technique is not bad. Yi Hao was also very envious of the Icefield Emperor's martial technique. If it can be dropped later, that would be even better. Little 7, can you still hold on? If you can't, then retreat. Yi Hao couldn't help but look at the rainbow dragon worriedly. Roar. The rainbow dragon roared in defiance, indicating that it could do it. Roar. The rainbow dragon roared again. Suddenly, changes occurred in front of the rainbow dragon. That is? Rainbow dragon aura? Yi Hao guessed when he saw the aura of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning appear in front of the rainbow dragon. Yi Hao knew that the rainbow dragon had its own martial technique, but he didn't expect that the rainbow dragon's aura would correspond to metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. 7 different types of attacks. This is going to be interesting. Seeing this scene, Yi Hao laughed in his heart. The power of snow versus the power of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. It was hard to tell which was stronger. You're still too weak. The Ice Field Emperor was a little surprised when he felt the power of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. After all, there were 7 different types of power. It was a little too messy. Only fire could restrain his ice field seal. But what was this little bit of fire? It wasn't enough for him to extinguish it. Seal. The Ice Field Emperor pointed his spear, and the surrounding temperature dropped rapidly. Even the scattered snow turned into goose feathers. And if you think that this is just ordinary snow, then you are gravely mistaken. Snow fell on the soldiers below, instantly turning them into ice sculptures. Their auras disappeared, and they did not even have the chance to dodge. Most of the snowflakes fell to the ground, and the ground was instantly frozen. It could be seen that the temperature of the snow was terrifying. 1. 2 types. 3. The 7 nature powers of the rainbow dragon were instantly frozen by the snowflakes. The first to freeze was the water, followed by the wind, which was directly converted into the Ice Origin Emperor's own power. Ice and snow combined with cold wind. Was there even a need to think about that kind of feeling? Then, the metal, wood, earth, and thunder were all frozen in the air by the snowflake. Only a huge fireball was left, and it began to tremble in the air, looking like it would be extinguished at any moment. Let's see how long you can last. I'll definitely turn you into an ice sculpture. The Ice Origin King thought gleefully as he saw that victory was in sight. Ha! As he shouted, more power surged out of his body, turning into palm-sized snowflakes that fell on the fireball. Every time a snowflake fell, the fireball would decrease by a little. Little 7, can you do it? Seeing Little 7 at a disadvantage, Yi Hao anxiously asked. If Little 7 was really turned into an ice sculpture, it would not be fun. Roar! The rainbow dragon did not panic. It roared at Yi Hao, giving Yi Hao a look that said, "Let's see how it performs." Does Little 7 have other ultimate moves? Seeing that 6 of the 7 nature powers of the rainbow dragon had been frozen, the remaining fireball was in imminent danger. Yi Hao curiously guessed. Die for me, foolish dragon, the Ice Origin King said disdainfully. At the same time, he flicked his spear, and more snowflakes fell on the fireball. Roar! Suddenly, just as the fireball was about to be extinguished, the rainbow dragon swung its tail, instantly destroying the snowflakes that had sealed 6 of its powers. As the rainbow-colored dragon swung its tail, the frost instantly dissipated, and the 6 sealed powers regained their freedom. Seeing this scene, the Ice Origin King did not panic. Because even if these powers were unsealed, they would not be able to cause any harm to him. More importantly, he could seal these powers at any time. As long as he sealed all the powers, he could easily seal the rainbow dragon and attack Yi Hao. Seal them again. Roar! Seeing all the snowflakes falling on his 7 powers, the rainbow dragon roared proudly. He was about to use his ultimate move. The aura of the 7 powers that were gradually being sealed suddenly changed. This is? Seeing the 7 powers changing, the aura of the rainbow dragon kept changing. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, the 6 powers that were about to be sealed exploded continuously. As for those 6 powers, they actually all turned into fireballs, emitting a violent heat. The snowflakes turned into water and evaporated, disappearing into the air. This. Upon seeing the sight before him, the Glacier Plain God Emperor felt as if a tsunami had struck his heart, as if he had suffered a huge blow. How is this possible? The Ice Origin King still could not believe what he was seeing. He had already used his martial technique. How could it change? There were clearly 7 powers. How could they all turn into one? And the 7 fireballs in front of him could not be fake. Even if it was unbelievable, it had happened. The Ice Origin King could feel the cold air around him gradually warming up. Waves of heat blew past his face. So what if it's a fireball? I can still freeze it. The Ice Origin monarch roared as he recovered from his shock. Similarly, he was also unconvinced. After all, as an emperor, he naturally had his pride. Following the Ice Origin king's roar, the power of the martial path in his body rumbled and surged out, turning into snowflakes. And the surrounding heat finally stabilized, no longer rising. At this moment, the Ice Origin king had already used all his power. The veins on his head were bulging, and beads of sweat were dripping down his forehead. This was the sweat of exhaustion, not caused by the heat. The Ice Origin king used all his power, and the cold air once again took over. Controlling the snowflakes, the Ice Origin king pressed down on the 7 fireballs, and under the Ice Origin king's attack, the 7 fireballs began to tremble weakly. Ice Origin king, hold on a little longer. Just one more step. Seeing that the Ice Origin king had already gained the upper hand, Yun-tsang clutched his chest and shouted excitedly. Chapter 544. Yi Hao looked at the rainbow dragon anxiously. He was already prepared to retrieve the rainbow dragon. The rainbow dragon was the spirit of the sky dragon throne. If the rainbow dragon was destroyed, the sky dragon throne would be useless. Bing Yuan, kill it! Kill this beast! Seeing the rainbow dragon at a disadvantage, Yun-tsang shouted anxiously. After all, the rainbow dragon had caused him a lot of damage. He wanted to pull out the rainbow dragon's tendons. Most importantly, he would be able to deal with Yi Hao after killing the 7-colored dragon. Looking at Yi Hao, who was sitting on the sky dragon throne, Yun-tsang's eyes were filled with killing intent. He gritted his teeth in hatred. Seal! Bing Yuan shouted. Instantly, all the energy in Bing Yuan's snow seal pressed down on the 7 fireballs. The flames on the 7 fireballs were constantly changing. Roar! The rainbow dragon suddenly opened its mouth wide and sucked hard. It actually wanted to suck the 7 fireballs into its mouth. Bing Yuan was also stunned by the rainbow dragon's actions. The rainbow dragon was relying on the 7 fireballs to hold on and fight against him. At this critical moment, the rainbow dragon had actually retrieved the fireballs. Wasn't that courting death? Humph, since you're in a hurry to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Bing Yuan sneered. At the same time, he attacked the rainbow dragon. Under Bing Yuan's control, all the snow and ice in the area attacked the rainbow dragon. In the blink of an eye, all the snow and ice covered the rainbow dragon. Ha ha, stupid thing. Bing Yuan laughed proudly when he saw the rainbow dragon covered in snow and ice. He couldn't see the rainbow dragon's appearance. He didn't expect the rainbow dragon to give up at this critical moment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have won so easily. Bing Yuan, you did well. Yun-tsang praised with a smile. Kid, if you kneel and beg for mercy now, you might suffer less. Bing Yuan smiled at Yun-tsang. Then, he looked at Yi Hao proudly. Now that the rainbow dragon was gone, Zhuge Liang and the others couldn't spare any time to help. Therefore, in their eyes, Yi Hao had already become someone they could slaughter at will. Brat, didn't you tell me to kneel down? Aren't I standing still? Why don't you kneel down before me? Yun-tsang was also looking at Yi Hao with a cold smile on his face. Just as he finished speaking, he was about to attack Yi Hao. Bang! Roar! Just as Yun-tsang was about to attack, a loud noise came from the 7-colored dragon. A huge fireball appeared where the 7-colored dragon was. All of the ice and snow melted in the blink of an eye. A dragon roar could be heard. Pooh! Beside the rainbow dragon, the Ice Origin king spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying like a broken kite. As for Yun-tsang, who was about to make a move on Yi Hao, his eyes suddenly narrowed and he quickly reacted in his heart. Not good, run! Yun-tsang glanced at the giant 7-colored dragon. Without hesitation, he immediately fled. Rumble! Suddenly, the huge fireball beside the rainbow dragon smashed towards Yun-tsang. This fireball seemed to be the amalgamation of all the previous fireballs. It was so huge that it seemed like the entire world was in a furnace. In the blink of an eye, the ground started to crack. Even though Yi Hao was a seventh-order martial emperor, he could feel the heat in the air. Fight. Looking at the fireball coming towards him, Yun Tsang made up his mind. Since he couldn't escape, he might as well give it a try. Sky Spike Slash! Yun Tsang shouted. He placed his weapon in front of him and charged towards the fireball. He didn't believe that the seven-colored dragon could defy the heavens. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Yun Tsang and the huge fireball collided. Instantly, sparks flew in all directions. The huge fireball burst into countless smaller fireballs that flew in all directions. Yun Tsang shouted again. He held his weapon and blocked the huge fireball. The two of them were in a deadlock. The weapon in Yun Tsang's hand was burned red by the scorching flames. This was an Emperor-grade weapon. If it was a weapon below the Emperor grade, it would have been melted into molten iron and turned into nothingness. Yun Tsang wasn't any better. He didn't know if it was because of the heat or because of the flames, but his entire body had turned red. Beads of sweat continuously appeared on his body. At the same time, he was being dried up. Gotcha! Suddenly, the weapon in Yun Tsang's hand made a cracking sound. This meant that the weapon in Yun Tsang's hand was on the verge of destruction. Not good. Yun Tsang's heart tightened. Looking at the weapon that was about to be destroyed, he was in a dilemma. Quickly, save His Majesty! Seeing that Yun Tsang was in trouble, the soldiers in Yun Tsang's camp immediately shouted. Instantly, countless people flew towards the fireball. PFFF. Bang! As a result, many soldiers were seriously injured by the fireball before they could even get close. Some were even burned to ashes. However, they could see that the fireball had weakened a lot. Seeing that the fireball had weakened, Yun Tsang was relieved. He immediately shouted to the soldiers, "All of you, continue to attack." With Yun Tsang's order, even more soldiers rushed towards the fireball. Roar! Looking at the soldiers rushing towards it, the rainbow-colored dragon let out a disdainful roar. Boom! Suddenly, the huge fireball exploded and turned into countless smaller fireballs, shooting in all directions. PFFF! 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 The fireballs accurately shot into the bodies of all the soldiers. The weaker soldiers immediately started to catch fire from within their bodies. They were burned to ashes. Retreat! Yun Tsang didn't expect that the fireball would suddenly explode. The moment the fireball exploded, he immediately shouted. Hiss! Yun Tsang frantically retreated. However, his back was still hit by the fireball. Even his armor was melted by the fireball. His back was a mess of flesh and blood. It was pitch black. If one were to smell it carefully, they would definitely be able to smell the smell of burnt flesh. It hurts. Feeling the intense pain on his back, Yun Tsang grimaced in pain. He immediately took out a recovery pill and swallowed it. When he turned around, he saw that his back had turned into a sea of fire. As for those soldiers that rushed towards him, other than himself, they were all burned to nothingness. Little bastard, I'm not done with you! Yun Tsang looked at Yi Hao with resentment and roared furiously. Because his current sorry state was all caused by Yi Hao. After the rainbow-colored dragon used the rainbow-colored dragon might, it became even weaker. It let out a low roar at Yi Hao and shot into the heavenly dragon throne. Little Seven's performance was not bad. Yi Hao praised as he looked at the sea of fire on the ground. He didn't expect that the rainbow-colored dragon phantom was actually so powerful. It was actually able to defeat Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan. Furthermore, the two of them were injured to different degrees. This had already exceeded his expectations. Furthermore, the explosion of the huge fireball had actually increased his dragon power by nearly 1 million. In other words, the might of the fireball had actually killed more than 1 million soldiers. Chapter 545. Ahem, Yun Song, what happened? Bing Yuan had just woken up from his coma. He looked at the sea of fire below him and asked in shock. Bing Yuan looked at Yun Song and realized that Yun Song's body was covered in burn marks. Even the domineering armor on his body had lost its former elegance and was now beautiful. Looking at Yun Song now, he no longer looked like an emperor who had conquered the battlefield. He looked no different from a beggar. Fortunately, the rainbow dragon had disappeared. This allowed him to heave a sigh of relief. Just now, the rainbow dragon spat out a huge fireball and severely injured you. Yun Song immediately told Bing Yuan what had happened. Since the rainbow dragon has disappeared, what are we waiting for? Let's join forces and kill this little bastard. Bing Yuan looked at Yi Hao with murderous eyes. The two of you, the feeling of being burned must be terrible. Yi Hao ignored the murderous looks in their eyes and asked with a smile. Little bastard, I'll kill you. Feeling the burning pain all over his body, Yun Song was furious. Furthermore, Yi Hao had dared to provoke him. Did he really think that he was someone to be trifled with? Don't be in such a hurry. You haven't seen a good show yet. Yi Hao waved his hand. A good show? Bing Yuan frowned and looked at Yi Hao in confusion. Little bastard, what other tricks are you trying to play? Yun Song stared at Yi Hao and roared without holding back. Look at your dragon power. Yi Hao said with a smile. What's wrong with our dragon power? The two emperors looked at their dragon power suspiciously after hearing Yi Hao's words. How is this possible? Where did my dragon power go? Little bastard, what did you do? The two emperors suddenly shouted in agitation. The reason for that was because they discovered that their dragon power had decreased substantially. Yun Song's dragon power had decreased by 1 billion. That was 1 billion. Even a top empire only had that much dragon power. Yun Song's empire only had 40 dragon power in total. In the blink of an eye, it had decreased by a quarter. How could he accept this? As for the Icefield faction, it was even more terrifying. Their dragon power dropped by 2 billion, which was half of their total. Bing Yuan and Yun Song felt like they were going crazy as they stared at Yi Hao crazily. Have you ever experienced despair? Yi Hao suddenly asked. Bing Yuan and Yun Song were stunned. They didn't know what Yi Hao meant. The two of them stared at Yi Hao. Squeak, 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 suddenly, the cry of the heaven-devouring rat could be heard. What was that sound? Hearing heaven-swallowing rat's voice, Bing Yuan and Yun Song vigilantly picked up their weapons and looked around. However, with just a glance, his expression changed drastically. At some point, countless rats had appeared around them, drooling as they stared at them. Just a bunch of damned rats. What's there to be afraid of? Yun Song coldly snorted. Ice Principle swallowed his saliva and reminded, Look at their cultivation. What's wrong with their cultivation? Earlier, Yun Song didn't check the heaven-swallowing rat's cultivation. He listened to Bing Yuan and directly shouted, Peak martial saint. As martial gods, they shouldn't be so agitated when they saw martial saints. But now, it was hard for them to remain calm. There were several thousand heaven-swallowing rat. I don't believe it. Yun Song still couldn't believe that Yi Hao had so many peak martial saint level rat. He immediately looked at the other rat. The more he looked, the more frightened and powerless he became. Because, without exception, all 4,000 heaven-swallowing rats were peak martial saint level. 2 second-order martial gods, who were seriously injured, were fighting against 4,000 peak martial saint level heaven-swallowing rat. Who was stronger and who was weaker could be seen at a glance. Little ones, play with them. Looking at Bing Yuan and Yun Song's panicked expressions, Yi Hao said to the heaven-swallowing rats. Squeak, squeak. The heaven-swallowing rats immediately responded to Yi Hao and surrounded Bing Yuan and Yun Song from all directions. Yun Song, no need to panic. The heaven-swallowing rats also have weak spots. Their defense is trash. As long as we cooperate well, it's not impossible to kill this group of disgusting beasts. Bing Yuan cautiously looked at the rats around them and said in a low voice, I should be able to use icy snow seal again. In a while you use sky thorn slash. You must seize the opportunity. Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang didn't dare to be careless, cautiously looking at the heaven-swallowing rat. Icy snow seal. Suddenly, Bing Yuan shouted loudly and used a martial skill, Bing Yuan Shui Seal. In an instant, the surrounding air suddenly dropped. Roar! Suddenly, a dragon's roar sounded. Bing Yuan's heart suddenly panicked and he looked back in fear. It would have been better if he didn't look. Once he looked, his martial skill was actually interrupted. How could the heaven-swallowing rats let go of this opportunity? They instantly opened their mouths, revealing sharp teeth and biting. You want to fight with me? You're still too inexperienced, Yi Hao said with a proud smile. At the same time, he looked at the giant dragon beside him. Master, that group of rats are all peak martial saints. Can you give me a pill as well? Looking at the heaven-swallowing rat's cultivation, the giant dragon said covetously. His cultivation had already recovered to martial emperor level. However, if he wanted to recover to peak martial saint level, he would still need some time. Yi Hao glanced at the giant dragon. In his heart, he wasn't too willing to give the giant dragon the peak martial saint pill. This was because there was only one disadvantage to peak martial saints. That was, after eating the peak martial saint pill, they wouldn't be able to continue cultivating in the future. In Yi Hao's opinion, the giant dragon's potential was far beyond peak martial saint level. You can give it to him. The dragon race has a special physique and has a strong immunity. Peak martial saint pill doesn't have any restrictions for him. Just as Yi Hao was hesitating, the system in his mind suddenly said, Why didn't you say so earlier? When he heard the system's words, Yi Hao was overjoyed. However, he still complained. However, the system seemed to have automatically omitted this complaint. Once again, it fell into silence and ignored Yi Hao. Here. Since there were no restrictions, Yi Hao immediately took out a peak martial saint pill and gave it to the giant dragon. Thank you, master. The giant dragon sniffed the peak martial saint pill and was overjoyed. Then, he swallowed it. Roar! The giant dragon suddenly roared into the sky. His roar was filled with joy. Master, my cultivation has finally recovered. The giant dragon cried out excitedly. I'll let you have a taste of my power, the giant dragon said excitedly as he looked at Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang who were fighting with the heaven-swallowing rats. Then, like a missile, the giant dragon extended his sharp claws and charged toward the two. Bang! The two who were already having a hard time dealing with the attack were instantly sent flying. Pfft! The two spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 546. No wonder it's one of the top demonic beasts in the 10,000 countries continent. Its fighting strength is indeed powerful. Yi Hao looked at the strength that the dragon had unleashed. It was definitely comparable to any beginner-level martial god. Not to mention Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang, they were already seriously injured. Even if they weren't seriously injured, they probably wouldn't be a match for the dragon. Squeak squeak. Seeing that Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan were seriously injured and unable to get up, the heaven-devouring rats immediately pounced on them. No. No. Get lost. You bunch of dirty rats, don't bite me. I'll kill you bunch of damn rats. Ignorant kid, I, Yun Tsang, will not live under the same sky as you. Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan were constantly being bitten by the rats. The pain on their bodies caused them to constantly curse. At this moment, the most ruthless person in their hearts was Yi Hao. Because all of this was caused by Yi Hao. Gradually, Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang's body were completely divided up by the heaven-devouring rat. Kill. Yi Hao immediately ordered the heaven-devouring rat. The heaven-devouring rats immediately shot towards the army below. Not good, His Majesty is dead. Not good, Alliance leader is dead. Many soldiers saw Bing Yuan and Yun Tsang being killed with their own eyes and shouted in panic. What? His Majesty is dead. Then what should we do? Might as well commit suicide. At this moment, the atmosphere of Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan being killed gradually spread throughout the army. Everyone's mood was terrifyingly gloomy. Haha, it's already 450,000. Yi Hao looked at his dragon power and saw that it was still rising rapidly. One must know that this 450,000 dragon power could be considered a mid-tier sacred rank force in the 10,000 countries continent. There were only a few mid-tier sacred rank forces in the 10,000 countries continent, and there were less than 20 of them. And Yi Hao had squeezed into a mid-tier sacred rank force through the 10,000 countries ceremony. At this moment, outside the secret realm. What is the origin of this fire dragon empire? Is it trying to change the structure of the 10,000 countries continent? It's already 450,000 dragon power. I remember that it was only 14 dragon power at the beginning. And there are only 3 people left on the empire ranking list. He actually took down 6 of them in a row. At this moment, everyone was looking at the incomparably dazzling chaotic entry list in the air. Each and every one of them felt their hearts palpitating. This was a fear of the unknown. They didn't know what the Fire Dragon Empire was, and they didn't know what would happen if the empire rankings disappeared. At this moment, they could only observe the movements of the Fire Dragon Empire through the dragon energy on the Chaos Leaderboard. Look, the Nation of Gods list is gone. Just when everyone was worried about the future, the Nation of Gods leaderboard suddenly disappeared. Did the Fire Dragon Empire enter the Holy Kingdom? Everyone was guessing. Impossible. The Fire Dragon Empire is still in the Imperial Kingdom's secret realm. Someone immediately retorted. Everyone looked at Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan's rankings. Sure enough, the battle had not ended yet. Then why did the Nation of Gods list disappear? Everyone was confused. So it's this tiring to slaughter. Yi Hao sat on the heavenly dragon throne and yawned. It had been almost 10 days, and the soldiers of Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan's camp were still not finished. After all, there were 5 billion soldiers. Even if the ancient mutated beasts and sky-devouring rats were fighting day and night, there were still 2 billion soldiers left. But this was all dragon energy. Even if there were another 10 billion, he would still accept it. And now, his dragon energy had broken through to 700,000. Not to mention others, even he himself was deeply surprised. Looks like it'll take a few more days. Yi Hao heard the beast roars coming from all around. At this moment, Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan's people were no longer charging blindly. Most of them had already started to run. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so tiring. It's finally over. After another 7 or 8 days, all the soldiers were finally slaughtered. Yi Hao finally let out a breath of relief. Ding dong, ancient mutated beast dead. Ding dong, ancient mutated beast dead. Ding dong, sky-devouring rat dead. Ding dong, sky-devouring rat dead. Ding dong, ancient mutated beast dead. Just as Yi Hao was about to call back all the ancient mutated beasts and sky-devouring rats, the system's notifications suddenly rang out continuously. What? Hearing this notification, Yi Hao was shocked. At the same time, he was puzzled. One had to know that the ancient mutated beasts and sky-devouring rats had also been killed when they were slaughtering Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan's soldiers. But those were only a few, and only one would die every few days. Now it had rung more than 10 times. Most importantly, the Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan soldiers of this world had all been killed. How could the ancient mutated beasts and sky-devouring rats have died for no reason? There are strong people approaching. The host is advised to leave quickly. There are dangers approaching. The host is advised to leave quickly. At this moment, the system's notifications suddenly rang out urgently. Yi Hao ignored the system. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked at the people in the distance. You must be the master of that group of ancient mutated beasts. Soon, a group of people landed in front of Yi Hao. The leader was actually a very young man. Zhen Wei looked at Yi Hao arrogantly. Boy, what a big pill. Why don't you kneel down when you see God, Zhen Wei? A guard behind Zhen Wei also didn't put Yi Hao in his eyes. Because they were from the Zhentian Divine Kingdom, one of the 4 divine kingdoms in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Moreover, Zhen Wei was the crown prince of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom. In the Myriad Kingdom continent, he was definitely a supreme existence. This chair is not bad. I want it. You can scram now. Zhen Wei didn't even look at Yi Hao, as if Yi Hao couldn't enter his eyes at all. He directly said in a commanding tone. It was as if it was an honor for Yi Hao to give him the heavenly dragon throne. Yi Hao. Hearing Zhen Wei's tone, Yi Hao frowned. He didn't expect Zhen Wei to be so insolent. He hadn't even settled the score of killing his ancient mutated beasts for no reason. He even dared to speak to him in a commanding tone. Now, he even wanted to snatch his heavenly dragon throne. If this matter happened to a normal person, they would be angry, let alone Yi Hao. Boy, did you hear that? Hurry up and thank God, Zhen Wei. The guard beside Zhen Wei didn't wait for Yi Hao to speak and said the same thing. Who do you think you are? Yi Hao looked at the guard contemptuously. You're just a dog. You barked before your master did. You have no eyesight. What did you say? The guard seemed to have heard wrongly and couldn't help but shout in exasperation. If you have the ability, say it again. Although he was a guard, he was a member of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom and a favorite of God Zhen Wei. Not to mention others, even the leader of the Holy Dynasty would have to give him some face when they saw him. Chapter 547. Zhen Wei's face also became ugly. As the saying goes, you have to look at the owner before you hit the dog. Yi Hao ignored the guards like this, which was also ignoring himself. Zhen Wei's face became gloomy, and he said in a deep voice, Teach him a lesson for me. Behind Zhen Wei, a group of mid-level martial god guards immediately rolled up their sleeves and walked towards Yi Hao with a sneer. They didn't even take out their weapons because in their eyes, Yi Hao was not worth their weapons at all. Zhen Wei stood proudly on the side. In their opinion, in this world, there was no one they couldn't afford to offend, and no one dared to offend them. And Yi Hao dared to not give them face, so he must pay a painful price. Courting death. Zhen Wei was arrogant, but Yi Hao was also not to be trifled with. These people around Zhen Wei were all around the 5th or 6th order martial god. The magical beasts were too scattered, and it was too late to call them back. After so many days of fighting, each of them was weak. Even if they came back, they were not the opponents of these guards. Needless to say, Zhuge Liang did not have the advantage in numbers at all. It was the same in terms of cultivation realm. But Yi Hao still did not panic, because he had the peak martial god composite potion. This was the system's reward for fusing the origin fragment. He did not expect to use it so soon. Give it to Zhuge Liang. Yi Hao thought for a moment and decided to give the potion to Zhuge Liang. Thinking of this, Yi Hao immediately summoned Zhuge Liang. Haha, idiot, a 3rd order martial god trash wants to deal with my mid-level martial god subordinates. Seeing Yi Hao summon Zhuge Liang, Zhen Wei laughed loudly. Zhen Wei mocked Yi Hao loudly. At this moment, in his eyes, Yi Hao was like an idiot. Kill this trash first, then deal with that kid. Where did so many powerhouses come from? Zhuge Liang was summoned, and the usual calmness on his face disappeared. Zhuge Liang looked nervously at Yi Hao, looking for help. Because he knew that these people did not come with good intentions, and he was not their opponent. After all, he was only a low-level martial god, and the other party was a group of mid-level martial god. Master, I'll hold them back. You run. Zhuge Liang could not think of a countermeasure, and could only transmit his voice to Yi Hao. Why are you running? Drink this, Yi Hao said angrily. He had not expected that even his own subordinates would look down on him so much. This was not Zhuge Liang's fault. After all, the disparity in power was obvious. Although Zhuge Liang did not know what the peak Einherjar compound was, he had some guesses in his heart. All Zhuge Liang immediately took the medicine and drank it. No reaction? Zhuge Liang looked at Yi Hao anxiously. When Yi Hao saw this, he felt a little guilty. Could it be that he had been tricked by the system because the peak martial god composite medicine was not effective? Kill! Suddenly, a person shouted and a circle of sharp weapons smashed towards Zhuge Liang. Seeing the incoming fist, Zhuge Liang could only vaguely see the shadow of the fist. His mind was quickly making plans and dodging route. However, his speed could not keep up with his thoughts at all. Just as he was about to dodge, the fist had already landed on his body. Boom! With a muffled sound, Zhuge Liang was directly sent flying. Ha ha ha, trash! What a trash! You can't even withstand a single blow. The person who punched could not help but laugh proudly. At the same time, he looked at Zhen Wei respectfully, hoping that Zhen Wei would reward him. Zhen Wei was in a good mood. When he saw Zhuge Liang being sent flying, he felt that he had instantly gained face. You did well. When we go back, I will reward you greatly, Zhen Wei said with a smile. At the same time, Zhen Wei looked at Yi Hao contemptuously. Kid, you want to fight with me? Who do you think you are? Yi Hao's face was gloomy at this moment. At the same time, he contacted the system angrily. System, I need an explanation. The system was silent for a moment. This is the system's fault. It forgot to tell you the flaw of the peak martial god composite medicine. It needs a buffer time of 300 seconds. Yi Hao was even more furious. He was angry that the system did not remind him earlier. One had to know that 300 seconds was 5 minutes. These 5 minutes could kill someone. The system was silent for a moment again before it said, in order to make up for the system's mistake, the host will be rewarded with a peak martial god pill. I almost died and you only compensated me with 1 pill. Yi Hao laughed in his heart, but he still pretended to be unhappy and asked. After all, he was just angry at the beginning. The system did not tell him in advance. He did not expect the system to compensate him, but he did not expect the stingy system to really compensate him. Moreover, it was a peak martial god pill. It could be said that the system was giving him a peak martial god expert. The system will help Zhuge Liang. This is the system's greatest right. After all, this world has its own rules. There are too many restrictions on the system. If you did not obtain so much dragon power, the system would not be able to do it. Hearing the system's words, Yi Hao was already very satisfied. He was now looking forward to the system making more mistakes in the future. That way, he would be able to get some additional rewards. Cough cough. At this moment, Zhuge Liang finally got up from the ground. He looked at Yi Hao with some resentment in his eyes. He wondered if Yi Hao had tricked him and deliberately made him drink plain water so that he could get beaten up. Oh my, you can still stand up. Zhen Wei's subordinate saw Zhuge Liang stand up and walked towards him provocatively. Continue lying down for me. Zhen Wei's subordinate punched Zhuge Liang once again. Just as Zhuge Liang was about to dodge, he suddenly felt a powerful force in his body. Little Xian, don't waste time, kill him directly. Zhen Wei ordered his subordinate. Yes. Little Xian answered respectfully. He looked at Zhuge Liang with a cruel smile on his face. Bang! Just as Little Xian's fist was about to hit Zhuge Liang suddenly moved. Little Xian felt his fist become light and mist. Little Xian looked for Zhuge Liang, but he discovered that the Zhuge Liang in front of him had disappeared. Where is he? Little Xian could not believe that Zhuge Liang had disappeared. He did not believe that he could not hit Zhuge Liang. Zhuge Liang was clearly a third-order martial god trash. How could he dodge his attack? This was simply inconceivable. Even Zhen Wei was taken aback. Suddenly, he felt a gust of wind blowing behind him. Zhen Wei was startled and wanted to run away. "I advise you not to move." Zhuge Liang's voice suddenly sounded in Zhen Wei's ears. Zhen Wei's face turned ugly. "Hurry up and activate my god's son Zhen Wei. Arrogant brat, do you know who you are holding in your hands? Brat, I advise you to kneel down and admit your mistake. It's not too late now." Chapter 548. Kid, I advise you to get your dog to let go of me. Zhen Wei didn't panic. He knew that it was useless to talk to Zhuge Liang, so he ordered Yi Hao directly. "Why should I?" Yi Hao asked with a smile. "Because of my status," Zhen Wei said haughtily. In his opinion, his status was a golden ticket to avoid death. After all, he was the crown prince of the Zhentian divine nation, one of the 4 divine nations. Who would dare to provoke him? "Is that so?" Yi Hao got up and walked to Zhen Wei's side. Zhen Wei was still smiling. He believed that Yi Hao would let him go respectfully. However, he wouldn't let Yi Hao go. No one had ever made him so unhappy and dared to capture him. This was not giving him any face. If he didn't give him any face, he wouldn't give the Zhentian divine nation any face. The consequences would be severe. Get your dog to chop off his own hands and offer up your chair with both hands. If you say no, I'm in a good mood and might even spare your life. Zhen Wei ordered Yi Hao. "Spare your ancestors? How dare you act tough in front of me?" Yi Hao's smile faded when he heard Zhen Wei's words. He raised his fist and swung it at Zhen Wei's head. "Do you really think this is your home? You don't care about the occasion when you act tough. Why don't you take a look at whose hands you are? God's son? I think you're more like a lunatic." Yi Hao's fist was aimed at Zhen Wei's head without any aim. Recalling Zhen Wei's arrogant and insolent appearance, Yi Hao still felt unsatisfied. He directly used his leg to kick Zhen Wei. Zhen Wei was completely stunned. His subordinates were also stunned. Even Zhuge Liang was stunned. Zhen Wei hadn't expected that Yi Hao would actually dare to hit him. Moreover, it was a violent beating and a punch to his face. Before this, he had never been hit by anyone. Not even a single hair on his body had been hurt. He had been born with a silver spoon in his mouth for so long. Everyone who saw him treated him well. But today, he was actually beaten up, and by a little brat at that. Therefore, at this moment, Zhen Wei fell into a state of confusion. He didn't even resist, and just stared blankly at Yi Hao. As for Zhen Wei's subordinates, their jaws dropped in shock. "The divine son has been beaten. We're finished. We're dead for sure this time. Who is this brat? How dare he hit our divine son? Doesn't he know how terrifying the Zhen Wei divine nation is? Even the holy dynasty is an existence that can be easily overturned." Everyone watched this scene quietly. It was not that they did not want to rescue Zhen Wei, but they were afraid that if they provoked Yi Hao, he would kill Zhen Wei. Zhuge Liang did not expect his lord to have such a violent side. "Aren't you, Zhen Wei, arrogant and conceited? I specialize in beating up people like you who act pretentious and conceited." The more Yi Hao beat him, the more he vented his anger. When he saw that Zhen Wei didn't know how to resist and Yi Hao stopped, he wondered if Zhen Wei had been beaten silly. "Hey, stop acting pretentious." Yi Hao slapped Zhen Wei again to wake him up. "You actually dared to hit me?" At this moment, Zhen Wei revealed an expression of disbelief. Zhen Wei's subordinates blushed with shame. Yi Hao didn't dare to hit him. He directly beat him up. "Brat, let's talk nicely. Let go of our divine son." Zhen Wei's subordinates swallowed their saliva and said in a low voice. Yi Hao glanced at Zhen Wei's subordinates. Seeing Yi Hao's sharp eyes, everyone panicked. Because this kind of gaze was much more intimidating than Zhen Wei's usual gaze. None of them dared to look at Yi Hao and quickly lowered their heads. All of you kneel down, Yi Hao directly said to everyone in a commanding tone. What? Are you crazy? Everyone looked at Yi Hao in shock. What a joke. He actually asked them to kneel down. Who were they? They were from the Zhentian divine nation. Other than the Zhentian divine emperor and Zhen Wei, only others would kneel to them. Who else would they kneel to? But Yi Hao, this arrogant and reckless brat, actually asked them to kneel down. Kill him for me. At this moment, Zhen Wei had finally recovered from the shock of being beaten up. Then, he felt a burning pain on his cheek. His heart was burning with anger. He roared furiously and his eyes were filled with killing intent. I advise you to be obedient. Be careful that I don't cut off your flesh and feed it to the rats. Yi Hao took out a dagger and slapped Zhen Wei's face. Hearing Yi Hao's words, Zhen Wei looked at the sky-devouring rat and couldn't help but snort coldly. The words that were in his throat were forcefully swallowed back down. Even if this was a secret realm, it was still a nightmarish experience. He didn't want to experience it. Why aren't you kneeling down? Do you want to see your divine son being eaten by rats? Seeing the hesitation on everyone's face and the anger in many of their eyes, Yi Hao continued to threaten. Everyone was unwilling to kneel down to Yi Hao because it would damage the reputation of Zhentian Kingdom. Brat, think carefully. If you want us to kneel down, the consequences are not something you can bear. One of them gritted his teeth and threatened. If Zhen Wei wasn't in Yi Hao's hands, he would have torn Yi Hao into pieces. It seems like you have a lot of nonsense. Then don't blame me for being impolite. After saying that, Yi Hao took out his dagger and slashed at Zhen Wei. No! Seeing Yi Hao's action, many people shouted in unison. Hiss! Zhen Wei let out a scream. Blood immediately gushed out from Zhen Wei's side. I'm going to kill you! I'm going to kill you! I'm going to kill everyone in your kingdom! The pain almost made Zhen Wei lose his mind and he kept shouting. Are you going to kneel or not? Yi Hao pressed the dagger against Zhen Wei's body and continued to ask. Don't hurt the divine son. We'll kneel. Everyone had ugly looks on their faces. They didn't dare guarantee that Yi Hao would say anything else. They had originally thought that Yi Hao was just threatening them. However, they hadn't expected that Yi Hao would really dare to make a move. Zhen Wei had been beaten up and a piece of his flesh had been cut off. Although this was the mystic realm, the crime of failing to protect Luo Yunyang would be enough to make them suffer. After all, the wrath of the sky-shaking divine nation wasn't something that ordinary people could bear. After all, Zhen Wei was the divine son of the sky-shaking divine nation and the successor of the divine emperor. In the past, there had been many batches of guards who had made mistakes while protecting Zhen Wei. The lightest punishment had been banishment to the border or imprisonment. The most severe punishment had been death. Martial gods might be valuable in other factions, but in the eyes of the sky-shaking divine nation, they were worthless like pigs and dogs compared to Zhen Wei. The only thing they could do now was follow Yi Hao's temper and reduce the damage to Zhen Wei as much as possible. This way, they could at least reduce the punishment that the sky-shaking divine nation would give them. Everyone exchanged glances. Their eyes were filled with displeasure as they glared at Yi Hao and knelt down. Chapter 549. No way. Everyone turned their heads away, unwilling to look at Yi Hao. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to control themselves and would attack Yi Hao. Come on, I want to hear slapping, Yi Hao said with a smile. What does it have to do with us if you want to hear slapping? Everyone was stunned when they heard Yi Hao's special request. Some of them even felt like their heads were cramping. Everyone, 1,000 slaps. I'll cut off a piece of his flesh if I miss a single one. Yi Hao smiled as he scanned the crowd. Everyone's mood didn't improve at all when they saw Yi Hao's smile. Don't go too far. Little Xian glared at Yi Hao gloomily and nearly shouted. You can slap him 10,000 times. You can think about it yourself if you miss a single one. Yi Hao liked to stick his neck out like this. He could take revenge for Zhuge Liang's punch. Little Xian wanted to retort, but when he saw the smile on Yi Hao's face, he was worried that Yi Hao would increase the number of slaps. So, he swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. It wasn't that he didn't dare to resist, but that Jinwei's flesh would be cut off. If Jinwei really had his flesh cut off because of him, then he would really be on the same path. He now regretted jumping out to speak. When they saw that little Xian wanted to slap them 10,000 times, those who wanted to slap them 1,000 times actually felt relieved. Slap, 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 everyone immediately started slapping their own faces left and right. Instantly, a chaotic mess of slapping sounds rang out. They felt that this was the greatest humiliation they had ever suffered in their lives. They might as well kill them all right now. This was simply torture. However, Jinwei was in Yi Hao's hands. Even if they wanted to cry, they had to keep it in their hearts. Wait a minute. Yi Hao suddenly spoke up to stop them as they were slapping their own faces. Everyone looked at Yi Hao bitterly. They wanted to know what other tricks Yi Hao had in mind. If looks could kill, Yi Hao would probably have died 10,000 times by now. You guys don't have any rhythm at all. Can't you guys be more orderly and have some rhythm? Yi Hao said with a smile. Damn you, you still have to listen to the rhythm of your face slapping? Can you not torture me like this? Hearing Yi Hao's words, everyone was so angry that they almost jumped up. They couldn't help but curse in their hearts. If there's no rhythm, I won't be happy listening to it. My hands might tremble. It won't be good if I accidentally hurt someone. The dagger in Yi Hao's hand kept moving around Jinwei's body, and finally stopped at Jinwei's crotch. Sensing the position of the dagger in Yi Hao's hand, Jinwei instantly forgot the pain in his body and straightened his body. Although this was a mystic realm, he was still afraid of leaving behind any repercussions. If he could not get it up in the future, that would be a tragedy. Can you move your dagger away a little? Jinwei said nervously. There was a hint of flattery in his tone. Jinwei finally knew fear now. After all, as the god's son of heaven of the myriad lands continent, he had all the beauties in the world. After all, what kind of woman wouldn't obediently throw herself into his arms after knowing his identity? At the same time, he also liked women very much. If he really couldn't get it up because of this, then what was the point of living? Why aren't you guys listening to him? Slap more rhythmically. After speaking, Jinwei sternly ordered little Xian and the others. Fine, they had already received Yi Hao's threat. Now that they had Jinwei's order, how would they dare to disobey? One by one, they began to try and coordinate with the slapping sounds of the people around them. Gradually, the slapping sounds slowly overlapped. In an instant, clear and loud slapping sounds rang out. Only then did Yi Hao nod his head in satisfaction. Seeing Yi Hao's satisfied expression, everyone finally heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone's faces were bitter. They probably never thought that there would be a day when they would have to slap their own mouths to see someone else's satisfaction. Come, follow my rhythm. Gang up on him, gang up on him. What? Seeing everyone slapping their own mouths, Yi Hao felt a rare pleasure in his heart. However, it didn't mean that he would let these people off easily. One had to know that Yi Hao had seen how arrogant these people were at the beginning. In the past, who knew how many honest and weak people had been bullied by them. Yi Hao naturally wanted to teach these people a lesson. Yi Hao couldn't help but recall a song from his previous life, and gave everyone an example. Hearing Yi Hao's rhythm, everyone was extremely unwilling, but they still consciously followed him. Damn, you're even better than me! Hearing everyone's rhythmic slapping sounds, Jinwei couldn't help but widen his eyes. He thought that he was very good at bullying people. After all, there were many people he didn't like who would naturally be bullied to death by him. However, he didn't expect Yi Hao to be able to bully people to this extent. If it weren't for the fact that he had a grudge against Yi Hao, he almost wanted to have a discussion with Yi Hao. However, Yi Hao hit him today and even cut his flesh. He bullied him because he was his subordinate. Zhen Wei had to take revenge for this. He wanted Yi Hao to know how serious the consequences of provoking him were. He wanted Yi Hao to bear the wrath of the entire Zhentian divine nation. He wanted everyone and everything that had anything to do with Yi Hao to disappear from the face of the earth. This wasn't him boasting. It was simply too easy for the Zhentian divine nation to do. He had already taken a fancy to a woman of the Holy Dynasty's holy son because he didn't like that holy son. The entire Holy Dynasty disappeared from the Myriad Kingdom continent overnight. As for that woman, she naturally became his object. As for that holy son, he received all kinds of torture and couldn't even beg for death. In the end, he was tortured to the point of schizophrenia and became neither human nor ghost. My lord, this. Hearing everyone's rhythmic slapping sounds, Zhuge Liang didn't know how to describe it. His lord was too awesome. He only felt that it was especially satisfying to watch little Xin slap people's faces. Come on, hand over all your valuables. Yi Hao suddenly spoke up as he watched the crowd slapping their faces excitedly. You're actually a robber? Hearing Yi Hao's words, everyone nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. One must know that although everyone's soul could enter this secret realm, they could bring in things from the real world. If those things disappeared, they would also disappear in the real world. Hurry up and hand over your spatial storage equipment. Yi Hao swept his gaze over the spatial rings on everyone's hands. He believed that these people, as martial gods and people of the divine nation, must have a lot of good things in their hands. After all, he had already offended them. Yi Hao no longer hesitated and might as well offend them thoroughly. Little Xin and the others felt their hearts ache. However, they still reluctantly took off their spatial rings. Zhuge Liang searched them. Yi Hao didn't believe that these people would be so honest. Chapter 550. Sure enough, after a while, Zhuge Liang found some spatial equipment on them. Kill them! Yi Hao knew that Zhuge Liang's cultivation time was almost up, so he immediately sent a voice transmission. Zhuge Liang hardened his heart and immediately obeyed Yi Hao's order. In the blink of an eye, everyone was killed. Even when they died, they did not know what was going on. Ding dong! Congratulations to hosts for obtaining 1 billion dragon power. Ding dong! Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 billion dragon power. Ding dong! Congratulations to hosts for obtaining 800 million dragon power. Ding dong! Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 billion and 10 billion dragon power. Ding dong! Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 billion and 95 billion dragon power. Ding dong! Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 billion and 5 billion dragon power. Ding dong! Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 billion dragon power. The system rang more than 20 times before it finally stopped. What? Is this for real? Yi Hao was extremely excited and could not believe it. After all, the total amount of dragon power was more than 20 billion. After killing these martial gods, he had obtained more dragon power than all the dragon power he had obtained before. Now, he had more than 30 billion dragon power in total. What Yi Hao did not know was that he had once again caused a sensation in the outside world. According to the calculation, after reaching 10 billion dragon power, one could be promoted to a theocracy. However, under the control of the 4 theocracies, no country dared to break 10 billion dragon power because it was purely suicidal. Because the 4 theocracies were too powerful, even imperial dynasties had to prepare for thousands of years before they dared to do so. Moreover, they had to have a good relationship with the theocracies, just like Yun Tsang and Bing Yuan. But that was because there were many theocracies and they were very competitive, so they had such an opportunity. Theocracies were different. No matter how fierce the competition between the 4 theocracies was, there was one thing that they especially agreed on. That was the level of theocracies. Now that the four theocracies had the momentum of dividing the world into four, they did not want to see other forces promote to theocracies. Whoever did so would have to face the wrath of the four theocracies. Before that, the four divine nations had wiped out quite a number of top-notch sacred dynasties. That was why many of the top sacred dynasties in the Four Fiends Alliance were stuck at 9 billion dragon power. However, he didn't dare to exceed 10 billion. That was because 10 billion was the bottom line of the four divine nations. It was the line of death. For Yi Hao to do such a thing, it meant that Yi Hao had declared war on the four god nations. Therefore, in the 10,000 land continent, even more people wanted to know what ability Yi Hao had to do this, because Yi Hao had brought them too much shock. Everyone looked at the remaining two lists in the sky quietly. One was the blood-red random entry list, and the other was the Empire list. Now, only these two lists were left in the sky. Even the Divine Kingdom list had disappeared. Looking at the 30 billion points of dragon energy behind the name of the Fire Dragon Empire, everyone felt like they were dreaming. After all, they had all mocked the Fire Dragon Empire in the beginning because the Fire Dragon Empire only had 14 points of dragon power. How could they not mock them for daring to go against the Empire? But in less than a month's time, the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power had increased from 14 points to 30 billion. It was as if the Fire Dragon Empire was slapping them in the face with their strength. You actually dared to kill them? You must be crazy. Seeing Zhuge Liang kill all of his subordinates, Zhen Wei roared crazily. At this moment, even Zhen Wei felt as if his heart was dripping blood. That was because he had obtained that dragon power by slaughtering a saint-level secret realm with his own hands. That was 20 billion dragon power. Even for the Zhentian divine nation, 20 billion dragon power wasn't a small amount. Since he had already destroyed the saint-level secret realm, he didn't care about the emperor-level secret realm at all. However, how could he have imagined that he would fail in this emperor stage region that he looked down upon? And it was an extremely tragic defeat. He had suffered the greatest humiliation of his life, losing 20 billion dragon power. Moreover, all of his subordinates had been killed at this moment, and he had fallen into the hands of Yi Hao. Hand over the origin fragment. Yi Hao ignored Zhen Wei's madness and said directly. Hearing Yi Hao's words, Zhen Wei felt guilty and couldn't help but avert his gaze. Origin fragment? What's an origin fragment? I've never heard of it. Don't pretend with me. How did you get here without the origin fragment? Yi Hao looked at Zhen Wei mockingly. Zhen Wei frowned. Although he didn't know the specific function of this origin fragment, he had a feeling that this origin fragment was definitely not an ordinary item. Originally, he was still imagining that Yi Hao didn't know about the origin fragment. Who knew that Yi Hao actually knew about it? Hurry up and hand it over. Save yourself from physical pain. Even if you kill this divine son, I won't hand it over. Hearing Yi Hao's words, Zhen Wei's tone was unyielding. This was because he had a feeling that this origin fragment might be able to change the situation of the Myriad Kingdom continent. It was very important to Zhentian Divine Kingdom. For this origin fragment, even if he had to sacrifice his life, he wouldn't hesitate. Sky-devouring rats, teach him a lesson. After Yi Hao finished speaking, a group of sky-devouring rats immediately surrounded him. Looking at the sky-devouring rats that were drooling over him, Zhen Wei's eyes were filled with fear. You devil, you lunatic! Zhen Wei tried to use curses to ease the fear in his heart. Noble divine son, these sky-devouring rats don't hurt when they bite people. No, just kill this divine son. Don't worry, it's not that easy to die. No matter what, you have to play for 10 days to half a month. You'll die a horrible death if you torture this divine son like this. Oh? Haven't you tortured others before? Hearing Yi Hao's words, Zhen Wei instantly fell silent. Because what Yi Hao said was right, he had also tortured countless people. Because as long as he didn't like someone, he would torture them to death. If Zhuge Liang hadn't appeared at the beginning, he would have also tortured Yi Hao because he didn't like Yi Hao. As long as he didn't like someone, he would kill them. But he didn't expect that things would develop to this point. But now, he could finally understand the feelings of those who were tortured by him. At this moment, Zhen Wei's heart was filled with fear. After all, a group of green-eyed rats surrounded you and wanted to bite you. Anyone would feel fear. Chapter 551. Hearing Yi Hao's words, Zhen Wei could hear the squeaks of the rats from time to time. Forget it. So what if I give it to him? Who can take away something that belongs to Zhentian Kingdom? Zhen Wei thought to himself. Squeak, ah! Suddenly, a sky-devouring rat squeaked and bit Zhen Wei's thigh. Zhen Wei couldn't take it anymore and cried out. Zhen Wei held his thigh and cried out in pain. When had he ever suffered such a serious injury? In Zhen Wei's heart, there was only hatred for Yi Hao. However, he was all alone now and there was nothing he could do. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you, Zhen Wei said bitterly as he broke out in cold sweat. The current Zhen Wei was no longer as arrogant and despotic as he was at the beginning. You should have given it to me earlier. Why did you have to suffer so much? Don't you think so, divine son? Yi Hao said with a smile. If he had relied on himself, he might not have dared to enter the sage secret realm, let alone the god secret realm. If he went there alone, he would be courting death. However, he didn't expect that someone would deliver it to him. Zhen Wei reluctantly took out the 2 origin fragments from the spatial pendant. When Yi Hao saw the 2 origin fragments in Zhen Wei's hands, a smile appeared on his face. This was because Zhen Wei had 2 complete origin fragments in his hand. Yi Hao immediately took the origin fragment. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining an origin fragment. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 800 million experience points. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for obtaining an origin fragment. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 900 million experience points. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for leveling up. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for leveling up. Eat him, Yi Hao said to the sky-devouring rat as he pulled down Zhen Wei's space pendant. According to Zhen Wei's character, even if Yi Hao let him go, he wouldn't let Yi Hao go. Yi Hao might as well add more fear to Zhen Wei's heart. No, you don't keep your word. Zhen Wei immediately shouted when he heard Yi Hao's words. As for Zhen Wei's subsequent curses, Yi Hao did not care at all. Instead, he flew into the void with Zhuge Liang. Just as I expected, it's an origin source fragment. Yi Hao looked at the origin source fragment in front of him and felt slightly disappointed. Yi Hao put away the origin shards. Ding dong, source dregs can be fused into source fragments. Do you wish to fuse them? Fuse. Yi Hao had just put away the origin shards when the system's notification rang out. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining an origin source fragment. Currently, there are 6 origin source fragments. The host is rewarded with a chance to draw a lottery. It's time to leave this place. Yi Hao glanced at the void and was about to leave. But at this moment, the void suddenly changed and 9 continents appeared. The 9 continents were of different shapes, and 6 of them were shining brightly. Yi Hao looked at the 6 shining continents and felt a sense of familiarity. It's an origin fragment. Yi Hao suddenly thought of it and immediately looked into the infinite space ring. Where are my origin source fragments? Yi Hao was surprised to find that all the origin source fragments in the infinite space ring had disappeared. Yi Hao was very anxious. After all, it was related to him unifying the infinite lands. At the same time, it was also related to whether he could complete the task. Yi Hao immediately looked at the 6 shining continents. He found that the 6 continents had disappeared and 6 origin source fragments appeared in their place. Yi Hao immediately flew over. At this moment, the 6 origin source fragments suddenly moved and flew toward him. The origin source fragments were so fast that Yi Hao could not see them clearly. He only felt a pain in one of his fingers. Is this origin source fragment recognizing its master? Yi Hao looked at the origin source fragment and saw a trace of his blood. Suddenly, Yi Hao's vision blurred and a void appeared in front of him. There were countless balls of light in the void. Finally, his eyes fell on a tiny ball of light. Could this be the power of the origin source on the infinite lands? Yi Hao looked at the red ball of light. Because Yi Hao saw that a few areas on the ball of light were the same as his own origin source fragment. The scene changed. A barren land appeared in front of Yi Hao. There were only a few wild beasts on the land. But the actions of the wild beasts shocked Yi Hao. Every sneeze of the wild beasts would form a tornado. Every step that the wild beasts took would leave a huge footprint on the land. Are these still wild beasts? These divine-level magical beasts are nothing more than this. Yi Hao looked at this scene in shock. Slowly, the land began to change. There were more and more wild beasts. But at the same time, these wild beasts had returned to normal. And those powerful wild beasts were nowhere to be seen. At this moment, the sky suddenly changed. The entire land was shrouded in black haze. Are those people? Yi Hao looked at the people walking out from the black haze. They were all wearing different kinds of armor. There were men and women in this group. But without exception, these people were all very young. They looked a bit like young masters and young ladies who were training. A few of them whispered, and were about to rush into the void and grab the power of the origin source of this world. They wanted to take it for themselves. But at this moment, the land suddenly shook and more than a dozen wild beasts appeared. Yi Hao was shocked. He recognized these wild beasts. They were the wild beasts that appeared before. Those wild beasts roared at the sky. Suddenly, all the wild beasts in the infinite lands were boiling. And when those young masters and young ladies saw this scene, their faces became serious. Those people whispered again, and actually took the initiative to attack the wild beasts. What a powerful saber! What a powerful sword! Yi Hao saw 2 of them. They slashed out with their saber and stabbed with their sword. They actually destroyed tens of millions of wild beasts. And the entire land below them, the mountains and rivers instantly shattered and the seawater evaporated. Even the sky was torn open. What realm is this? Seeing the 2 people's seemingly simple but profound attacks, Yi Hao was so shocked that he couldn't speak to himself. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for comprehending the superficial knowledge of one sword martial technique. Martial technique level super heaven stage. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for comprehending the superficial knowledge of one sword martial technique. Martial technique level super heavenly tribulation. Seeing the 2 people's attack movements, Yi Hao's mind rang out. Super heaven stage. Yi Hao didn't expect that the 2 of them only used a simple sword and a simple saber. They actually surpassed the heaven stage martial technique. One had to know that the strongest martial technique in the infinite lands was only a heaven stage martial technique. It should be that this saber and sword have exceeded the tolerance of this world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to be a heaven stage martial technique. Yi Hao looked at the shattered sky and analyzed. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.